You would agree with me that if someone had committed physical violence against a spouse, that would be disqualifying to serve as Secretary of Defense, correct?
Senator, absolutely not have I ever done that.
You would agree that that would be a disqualifying offense, would you not?
Senator, you're talking about a hypothetical.
What does he do here? He says, absolutely, big pause, not have I ever done that. He caught himself almost saying, yeah, that would be disqualifying, which is the obvious answer.
Senator, anonymous false charges.
They're not anonymous. And I'll just conclude and say this to the chairman. You claim that this was all anonymous. We have seen records with names attached to all of these, including the name of your own mother. So don't make this into some anonymous press thing. We have seen multiple names of colleagues consistently throughout your career that have talked about your abusive actions.
Chairman, I think he's over his time. He's way over his time.
I now yield.
Yes or no, have you led an audit of any organization of which you were in charge?
Senator, in both of the organizations I ran, we were always completely fiscally responsible.
Yes or no, did you need an audit?
And the way
yes or no, did you need an audit?
Stated,
yes or no? What are you afraid of? You can't answer this question?
I've been a part of teaching about status of forces agreements.
But you don't remember to mention it? You're not qualified, Mr. Hegseth.
He has no idea what he's about to jump into.
So we're going to start with the what in my mind was, well, quite literally, as I was wrapping up the edit on this video, I just had the live stream pulled up of the Senate, and they did vote today to confirm Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. So all these questions you're about to see are going to very quickly become tested in real life, as he will be serving in the position of Secretary of Defense for presumably up to the next 4 years, though we will see how long he lasts under Trump and whether or not he issues illegal orders or whether or not he will refuse to issue illegal orders of the military. I am very concerned knowing now that this is the man who in reality is going to be the Secretary of Defense. Thank you for coming by and watching this video. Let's get into the confirmation hearing. This is probably the most concerning of the congressional the Senate confirmation hearings, which was for Secretary of Defense nominee Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth, as far as I know, he does have, he of course has military experience. It sounds like, you know, he did through either his charitable organizations or through his military service. It sounds like he did manage a group of people. I think he says maybe 100 to 200 people, right, is who he was in charge of. It's a huge jump to say that this person is suddenly qualified now to lead the entire Department of Defense. You know, a budget that his budget would be increasing by, like, I think over 1,000 times what it was before. That this would be, it's quite a stretch, you know, and this guy's been on Fox News for the better part of the last, I think, 10 years. So again, it's like he's taken a step away from any military experience, military service. And, you know, it would be like if I was like, say, like, a hairstylist, right? If I was a hairstylist and I got good at that, and then I suddenly stepped into an accounting job for 10 years, if I suddenly come back to try and cut hair, am I going to be anywhere near as good as I was? Probably not, right? I would still remember stuff, but, like, I would have to knock off the cobwebs. I'd have to, it would take a lot for me to probably get back to the point that I was. And who knows, maybe in that 10 years, something changed. Maybe I developed arthritis and now I can't cut as efficiently, right? Obviously there's other things that could happen. You could develop a nasty string of alcoholism, and that suddenly affects how well you're going to do your job. So we're going to watch this, but CQC is a person who has had military experience. And I just want to give him the floor for a minute here to kind of, you know, go into that a little bit and highlight some things here real quick on what experience he has and what his knowledge is going to be able to tell us about this greasy haired fuck right here. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I served in the military. I joined in the Army in 2014. That was still technically part, you know, during the war on terror, technically. So I got the ribbons for it and everything like that. Now, I made it to the rank of specialist. I was enlisted. I ended up getting out because I found out how truly stupid the military industrial complex is and the type of people that are actually in it. Most of them are not very good people. Did I still make friendships and brotherhood relationships with those people? Yeah, there's still some dudes there that I love dearly and I would do anything for. And I would die for. And they would do the same for me. That's just something that you get in the in the Army that you just don't get anywhere else. Now, as far as Pete Hegseth, from what I gathered, he achieved the rank of major. Now that is an officer. Officers completely different from enlisted personnel. Officers are in charge of things. They make decisions. Now, as far as being a major, is not very high up the ranks of an officer. I believe that's an 04, if I remember right. So
Tammy
he is
Baldwin will tell us.
Yeah.
Pretty sure she tells us. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. He is nowhere near the level of experience to operate something as major as the entire military industrial complex. That's something extremely difficult, multifaceted, that is, I think, beyond even his comprehension. And that's the thing, is that people do not get the ability to comprehend how big these things are until they are upper ranked, like generals. Even I think a brigade general, like that's 1-star general, I don't think they still fully perceive the complexity of the military industrial complex. The amount of learning you have to do at those ranks, this is the reason why these people are in the military for 20 to 40 years. There's a reason why those guys are always ended up being the 4-star generals, because the level of knowledge and time it takes to reach that and be able to understand how to operate something as complex as the U.S. military is it's really unfathomable. And the average person is not going to understand. Even I still do not fully understand, and I'm still learning things about it every single day, despite studying it almost every other day of the week, because I'm fascinated by military history and strategy and things like that. That I fully envelop myself in these things because I want to know how to fight the adversaries of the United States, or how our adversaries would fight us. I want to know that information because that's important to me, and I find it fun and a challenging thing to think about. He has no idea what he's about to jump into. And
Yep.
there's going to be a lot of things I'm going to talk about during this hearing. I understand that, you people that are on the right wing, it's going to be hard to hear some of these things. But you're literally hearing it from somebody who was in the military, who experienced good leadership in the military and poor leadership in the military. I tell you right now, he's going to be a poor leader. Just from the way he talks and his simple mannerisms just show how poor of a leader and a narcissist himself is. And that explains why he aligns with Trump so well. And frankly, the poorest leaders in the military are narcissists. And that's the truth of the matter.
Poorest leaders in life.
Any leaders in life. Yeah, they're just poor leaders. They don't critically think. They don't self-reflect or show empathy to others or understand the relationships.
They don't take responsibility when it really is needed. Yep.
And they don't think about relationships between themselves and their soldiers, or between other soldiers. They don't think about that stuff. That's poor leaders, and that's in other industries as well, not just the military. That's how you know there's a poor leader. If they cannot manage a relationship, there you go.
Right.
So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna listen to this. I'm gonna tell you what I know from my military experience and the problems with what he is saying. So you can go ahead and start off.
Cool. I obviously have, I have my own thoughts and opinions on the ramifications of such a nomination if confirmed. And I think that just the only thing I'll say before we actually start watching is that to me, the obvious thing here is that, considering that he's a self gratifying narcissist, is that his big goal is what, CQC? It's to, and he gets asked about this, so we will get to see him flounder on an answer to this question. It's that he is going to use this experience to get himself deep into the pockets of defense contractors. To where he's going to have such a juicy, saucy, money-filled career where he doesn't have to go on TV, where he can probably be as drunk as he fucking wants, and he's still going to be basically a millionaire, because at that point he's going to be either like a lobbyist for the defense industry, for the military industrial complex, or something along those lines. He'll get asked about that, so we'll see that. But it's a grift. It's just a really big grift. He does not care how good of a job he's going to do, as far as I can see. So, but I don't know. We'll let the audience decide for themselves. We're going to kick this off
by a group called Flag Officers for America, which has 120 retired generals and admirals offering their support for Mr. Hegseth's nomination. I ask unanimous consent. Without objection, it is entered into the record. Senator Shaheen.
Good morning, Mr. Hegseth.
Good morning, Senator.
I was pleased when I was contacted on your behalf about meeting before this hearing. I've been on this committee since 2011, and during that time, I voted to confirm 6 nominees to be Secretary of Defense from 3.
By the way, CQC, if you have thoughts on anything, just tell me when to pause. I'll pretty much let you sort of run with this one, because I know you're going to have so many thoughts at different points. So
Administrations.
I'm just going to let them exchange.
The first Trump administration. Every one of those nominees met with me and my Democratic colleagues on this committee before the hearing. So as you can imagine, I was disappointed when no one ever followed up. When we followed up with your office, you were not able to meet. Do you understand that if you're confirmed to be Secretary of Defense, that you will have a responsibility to meet with all members of this committee, not just Republicans?
Senator, I very much appreciate and understand the traditionally bipartisan nature of this committee. Their national defense is not partisan. It should not be about Republicans or Democrats. And so I look forward to working together with you and your colleagues on priorities facing this nation. Yes.
I think we would expect that. And one reason that I wanted to meet with you was because I thought it would be really helpful to better understand your views on women in the military. Because you've made a number of surprising statements about women serving in the military. As recently as November the 7th of 2024 on the Sean Ryan Show, you said, and I quote, "I'm straight up saying that we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective." The quote went on a little longer, but that was the gist of it. That was before you were nominated to be Secretary of Defense. Mr. Hegseth, do you know what percentage of our military is comprised of women?
I believe it's 18 to 20%, Senator.
It's almost 18%. And in fact, DOD's 2023 demographic report indicated that there are more women serving now, and there are fewer separations. So they make up a critical part of our military. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, ma'am. Women in our military, as I have said publicly, have and continue to make amazing contributions across all aspects of our battlefield.
Well, you also write in your book, The War on Warriors, with the chapter, The Deadly Obsession with Women Warriors, that, quote, "Not only are women comparatively less effective than men in combat roles, but they are more likely to be objectified by the enemy and their own nation in the moral realms of war." Mr. Hegseth, should we take it to believe that you believe that the 2 women on this committee who have served honorably and with distinction made our military less effective and less capable?
I'm incredibly grateful for the 2 women who've served our military in uniform, and including in the Central Intelligence Agency, contributions on the battlefield, indispensable contributions. Senator, I would like to clarify, when I'm talking about that issue, it's not about the capabilities of men and women, it's about standards. And this committee has talked a lot about standards. Standards that we, unfortunately, over time, have seen eroded in certain duty positions, certain schools, certain places, which affects readiness, which is what I care about the most, readiness on the battlefield.
I appreciate that.
And so my comments point time and time again to standards.
Your statements publicly have not been.
Yeah, go ahead and pause real quick.
After your nomination, you did.
Yep.
Okay. Now he's going to say this a lot. He's going to talk about standards and readiness. Okay. Now we already have a problem in our military with our standards and readiness, and that they're too high, and that's the reason why there's so much separation and turnover in the military. People don't understand how much things like PT, like physical training, like that stuff is difficult and hard on people, and it tears up their bodies over time. A lot of these people are going to develop. I would venture to say 90% of people that serve in a combat role in our military are going to have arthritis of some sort because of the tremendous physical strain on the human body. And they also want people that are of a certain size right? They want people. They prefer people like men that are like 160 to 180, carrying 200 plus pounds of gear on their body. So you got to think about how much that wears and tears on a body. Now think about, say, like in the mountains of Afghanistan, very mountainous country, very hilly, lots of rocks and things like that. Imagine climbing up those mountains with, a full combat load going up those mountains, which can be upwards of, like I said, 200 pounds, depending on what your role is in the military. Not a lot of these guys are not, not all of them are mechanized infantry units that go out there. A lot of these guys are, say, like airborne units or something like that. They jump out of planes into combat zones. They don't have, the luxury of having a transport to point A to point B. They have to actually drop in on their area, and that's hard on its body in itself. And landing on the ground with all that gear, so all that mounts up over time, and the physical requirements to operate that are insanity. Like, most humans cannot do what the people in the U.S. military do. The average American can't do one push-up, and these guys are doing 40 to 50 plus of these things on a PT test to pass it, just to pass it. They have to get 40 to 50 just to pass. So that ridiculous standard right there has created more turnover. We're already one of the most physically fit military units in the entire world. We have sophisticated technology, and he talks about readiness, but quite frankly, I think we're quite ready for military conflict, and we always have been. Now, a lot of other military, people or other people in the military would disagree with that, because they see these things at the National Training Center in Fort Irwin or in Louisiana. There's these two training centers. They go to these and they do war games there. These war games are not accurate to actual war. You're playing laser tag pretty much, and people are doing things they would not do in combat during those situations. It is not a realistic approach to how training for the military. Now, there are things that they do during, like, I think the most effective things like live fire exercises are far more effective than, playing laser tag in the middle of the fucking desert in California. So a lot of people base their belief in the military that they're not combat ready based on that laser tag, which is absolutely ridiculous to me. Now, people like Pete Hegseth, officers, love NTC for some fucking reason. They love that fucking training exercise. It is not reality to combat at all. Not close. I mean, I could give you a story of me and a squad, and I was in a striker unit, taking a striker and seeing what was, quote unquote, an enemy helicopter following us. And we decided the bright idea was to drive our truck across the desert in the open at full speed, because the person in charge of the squad was a fucking idiot. So, like, it makes no damn sense.
Know thy enemy.
Like, it's a helicopter. You ain't escaping from that. We have, we have to dismount and get find cover. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's not realistic, and that's not how people are really going to react to a threat like that. If you're in the reality of an attack helicopter attacking a striker, for example, say it's a Russian helicopter attacking a striker, everybody's going to get the fuck out and take cover. In reality, they're not going to try to drive away from it because we know we ain't going to outrun it. But during that exercise, people still do that shit because it's fun and fucking it's basically laser tag. There's a fault with that kind of training. That's why I prefer live fire exercises. They're more effective. So he's going to talk about these things, but he provides no type of solution or anything like that to these kind of problems. In my opinion, the military is perfectly ready because we do quite a bit of live fire exercises in itself. Those are effective ways of training, in my opinion. You're firing live rounds, down of course it's down a range. It's like, make believe like targets that you're in combat with, but
Right.
mental training like that and using the actual physical training of firing your weapon is more important to combat readiness than playing basically laser tag. So remember, he provides no way of fixing these issues during this hearing. He doesn't even try to offer it up. And officers like him love those kind of ineffective trainings because most officers are poor leaders in the military. So let's keep that in mind. Now, going back to the women thing in the military, women are very important to, I think, especially combat roles because they provide a level of seriousness to it that is drastically needed. The Army, the Marines, the Navy, all that is, just think of it like a giant frat. Have you ever been to a frat party during your college years, or maybe even during high school you went to a frat party or something like that?
Some people did.
Yep. So like think of it like a giant frat. A bunch of dudes who are just goofing off and being stupid.
Yes.
That is what the majority of the military members are doing there. Goofing off and being stupid, not taking things seriously. Women are more mature than men, to be quite frank.
Mature was the word I was going to use.
They are more mature, so they tend to bring a level of seriousness to those combat roles that is desperately needed. Now, is there going to be systematic problems with that? Yeah, there is, because men are fucked up in many ways in this country right now. So that's another topic. But we need that type of seriousness in the military. And quite frankly, all the women I worked with when I was in the infantry, all of them were way more serious and hardworking than the men I worked with. Because guess what? I was young and dumb too. And you know what I was doing? I was goofing off and acting like an asshole. So there's the reality of it. You got to remember, you're dealing with 18 to 21-year-olds, a majority of them. Fucking Private Johnson is not thinking very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very, oh boy, very responsible. Let's just say he's gonna probably go marry a stripper or something like that, like most privates end up doing, because they don't stop and think about things. The reason why that there's that perception of privates and young enlisted soldiers is because they do young, dumb, irresponsible things. It's just what they do. So women are going to be an integral part to keeping some seriousness and getting actual work done in the military because they're more mature. So that makes them important. I have worked with women and trained with women that could outrun me, which not many people can do, and do more push-ups than me, are just physically more athletic than I was in the military. They exist. I didn't think they existed when I was younger because I never experienced that because I grew up in a small town in bumfuck Arkansas. So I got a reality check whenever I was there. We need to recognize that these women are just as capable as men in these combat roles. Y'all, I know what right wing's going to do. They're going to be too emotional. No, they will take emotion out of things just like men can. They're capable of pulling the emotion out of combat.
Prioritizing. That's it. Prioritizing.
Because you can't have emotion in combat. If you have emotion in combat, you're going to get killed. Because you can't worry about, oh, my buddy got shot. You got to first return fire to the enemy before you can treat your buddy. You can't just spring out there to go grab your buddy, because you know who they're going to shoot next? You, who's going out in the open to grab your buddy. So that's the reality of war and battle. And women are just as capable of being like, okay, I need to return fire, kill the enemy, then get my buddy. They're just as capable of doing that. So this false idea that they're just going to be emotional statues out there and they're not going to do anything is false. But yeah, you can go ahead and continue the video.
Sure. I did just have something real quick to add. Of course, a quick story-ish. I used to play a good deal of paintball, and something that always made me laugh when I played paintball, because while I played primarily like speedball, like a tournament style, right, where you had the air at bunkers, it was a symmetrical playing field, and it was all fast-paced. You would dump hundreds of rounds down the field in one match. I did, through playing with people, still played a lot of games just out in the woods, out in the sticks, where sometimes you do have decent cover, sometimes you don't. And what always cracked me up is the people who were unbelievably militaristic in their strategy on things, because I always wanted to, because first off, a lot of them were not in the military to begin with. Secondly, I'm like, bros, it is paintball. You are talking about a projectile that at its fastest is like a third the speed of a pistol bullet, let alone a rifle round. And it's a ball, meaning when it's the amount of air resistance when that thing flies is immense. So you can't put it very far down range. So like your strategy changes completely when you realize that you can see when the shots are coming at you. You can literally see them flying through the air because it's a pink and green fucking circle sphere rather. The application just changes to me too drastically. Obviously there are things from the military that will work, but when people took it extremely seriously and they tried to be militaristic to a T, those people got destroyed every time I played, just plain and simple. And it's it comes down to situational awareness in some capacity and situational application. So anyway, I just thought that, I would add that, you mentioned like the war games and stuff and how those guys, a lot of people want to convince themselves that that's somehow going to really educate you in a combat scenario, a real life, actual live fire combat scenario. You hit the nail on the head. It's a competitive sport more so than it is real training. It sounds like, based on the way you describe it. So
yeah, it's the way it always goes down.
I think Shaheen's questions here were probably some of the least hard hitting. So we'll get
to a group of reporters that you quote support all women serving in our military today who do a fantastic job across the globe, including combat. So what I'm confused about, Mr. Hegseth, is which is it? Why should women in our military, if you were the Secretary of Defense, believe that they would have a fair shot and an equal opportunity to rise through the ranks? If on the one hand, you say that women are not competent, they make our military less effective, and on the other hand, you say, oh no, now that I've been nominated to be the Secretary of Defense, I've changed my view on women in the military. What do you have to say to the almost 400,000 women who are serving today about your position on whether they should be capable to rise through the highest ranks of our military?
Senator, I would say I would be honored to have the opportunity to serve alongside you, shoulder to shoulder, men and women, black, white, all backgrounds, with a shared purpose. Our differences are not what define us. Our unity and our shared purpose is what define us, and you will be treated fairly and with dignity, honor, and respect, just like every man and woman in uniform, just like the men and women that I've worked with in my veterans organizations, to include when I was a headquarters and headquarters company commander in the Minnesota National Guard.
Well, I appreciate your 11th hour conversion, but Mr. Chairman, for the record, I would like to submit Chapter 5, The Deadly Obsession with Women Warriors, for the record. Mr. Hegseth.
Without objection, it will be submitted.
Are you familiar with the Women, Peace, and Security agenda at the Department of Defense?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
This is a law that was signed during President-elect Trump's first term. It was legislation that I sponsored with Republican Senator Capito of West Virginia. It was co-sponsored by Marco Rubio, the nominee to be the President-elect's Secretary of State. It was led in the House of Representatives by Kristi Noem, the President-elect's nominee to be the Secretary of Homeland Security. It mandates that women be included in all aspects of our national security, including conflict resolution and peace negotiations. And at the Department of Defense, it has been the law for 8 years under both the Trump and Biden administrations. The DOD has incorporated women throughout its decision-making as a result. Every single combatant commander across 2 administrations has told this committee that this law and its implementation at the Department of Defense provides them a strategic advantage operationally. Based on your comments, it appears that the example that you would like to set, not only for women in this country, but for women across the globe, 50% of the world's population, as the prospective nominee to lead the most combat-credible military in the entire world, is that women should not have an equal opportunity in our military. So will you commit to preserving the Women, Peace, and Security law at DOD and including in your budget the requisite funding to continue to restore and resource these programs throughout the DOD?
Senator, I will commit to reviewing that program and ensuring it aligns with America First national security priorities, meritocracy, lethality, and readiness. And if it advances American interests, it's something we would advance. If it doesn't, it's something we would look at.
Not unless
Former
Doge
President Trump
cuts it.
signed the law. I hope that he agrees with you.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. At this point, I will.
All right. Yeah, her line of questioning kind of bothered me because to me it wasn't quite aggressive enough. She let him talk way too much. I like when you get to senators who ask like yes or no questions, you know, and obviously ask questions that are very relevant to, hey, this is an issue. I want you to address this, and you watch. This is where you start to see him sweat. Kirsten Gillibrand here really she starts to hit a lot harder. She pulls I think no punches. So we'll see.
Dentists hate when you do this.
Got added.
Got added. Thankfully, it's not boner pills. Jesus Christ. YouTube loves throwing those in my face, which you know is kind of hurtful. I'm like, why?
Mar Abbasi, son of former city council president of Samarra, Iraq, who worked with Mr. Hegseth in Iraq. Without objection, that will be entered. Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Hegseth. I do want to thank you for your service, and I want to thank you for your willingness to serve in this capacity.
Thank you, Senator.
I have many concerns about your record, and particularly your public statements, because they are so hurtful to the men and women who are currently serving in the U.S. military, harmful to morale, harmful to good order and discipline. If you are saying that women shouldn't be serving in the military, and I'm going to read you your quotes, because the quotes themselves are terrible, you will have to change how you see women to do this job well, and I don't know if you are capable of that. So I want to press on these issues that my colleague Jean Shaheen brought up, because she said it so well. So first of all, you answered your questionnaire. Do you believe that any American who wants to serve their country in the military and can meet objective standards set by the military should be allowed to serve without limitation? You've said yes to that question. But then in all of these other circumstances, you've denigrated active duty service members. We have hundreds of women who are currently in the infantry, lethal members of our military serving in the infantry, but you degrade them. You say, we need moms, but not in the military, especially in combat units. So specific to Senator Cotton's question, because Senator Cotton was giving you layups to differentiate between different types of combat. And specifically, as Secretary, would you take any action to reinstitute the combat arms exclusion for female service members, knowing full well you have hundreds of women doing that job right now? And the standards, your 2-mile run, Tom, is about the Army Combat Fitness Test. It is not the requirements to have an MOS 11 Bravo, which is infantry. These are the requirements today for people serving in the industry, men and women. They are gender neutral, and they are very difficult to meet. They have not been reduced in any way, and our combat units, our infantry is lethal. So please explain.
Just wanted to obviously I know you know what you're talking about, but in case anybody out there wants to be MAGA and be like, how do I know this CQC guy knows what he's talking about? You mentioned the standards are already too high. She just mentioned they haven't been lowered ever. So literally validating you right there with a fact check. She gave it to you. So.
Yeah, they keep on raising the standards. They haven't been lowering them. And
somehow I'm not surprised.
Yeah, and they're wondering why they have like a retention crisis. It's because you're putting too much on these people. Like, these are human beings, not cyborgs. They can't just pick up 500 pounds and run 20 miles and complete their objective and run back. Like, it's just it's not physically possible. But that's how the military dudes like Pete Hegseth see it. Like, young officers, and quite frank, he's was a young officer. was not a senior officer. He was a major. It's not a senior position. They don't see things like in a human way. They see soldiers as a number and an object that they have to use to achieve their objectives, and that's where the root problem is with a lot of officers and their leadership, is that they're too busy looking at numbers and the person as an object to be an effective leader. And Pete Hegseth has obviously demonstrated this using women, because he doesn't see women as a effective object to throw at the enemy. He doesn't see them that way. He thinks that they're weaker and slower, or she thinks they're weaker or he thinks that they're weaker and slower than he is. So there's no way that they can be, an effective combatant. So that's where you're going to see a lot of these senators attack him on this women's issue, is because of the way he sees women. And he can say that he doesn't anymore, but he has shown no proof that he has effectively changed. Because it wasn't very long ago that he was on Fox News spouting the same bullshit. So just keep that in mind. Like, he's going to say things that he's changed, but he has not demonstrated any proof that he has changed. We cannot take his word for it. We all know how hard it is to change people. People are stubborn. They want to stay in their ways. They do not want to move from it because it has worked for them in their life. And especially somebody like Pete Hegseth, who is quite frankly successful because, he was on Fox News. He's made tons of money and everything. He thinks his way is the only way. And that is not true. That is just a narcissistic tendency for a lot of these people that become successful. They just think that their way is the highway. There's no ways of changing it. There's no other ways of doing it. And they think that way in the military as well. And there's more than one way to skin a cat, I believe that's a saying.
It is. It's a bit morbid, but yeah, it's correct. So.
Yeah.
In charge of 3 million personnel. It is a big job. And when you make these public statements, and I get you were not Secretary of Defense then, I get you were on TV, I get you were helping veterans, I get it was a different job. But most recently, you said this in November of 2024, knowing full well you might have been named as Secretary of Defense. So please explain these types of statements, because they're brutal and they're mean and they disrespect men and women who are willing to die for this country.
Well, Senator, I appreciate your comments, and I would point out I've never disparaged women serving in the military. I respect every single female service member that has put on the uniform past and present.
Straight lie.
My critiques, Senator, recently and in the past, and from personal experience, have been instances where I've seen standards lowered, and you mentioned 11 Alpha, 11 Bravo, MOS, places in units, and the book that has been referenced multiple times here, The War on Warriors. I spent months talking to active duty service members, men and women, low ranks, high ranks, combat arms and not combat arms. And what each and every one of them told me, and which personal instances have shown me, is that in ways direct, indirect, overt, and subtle, standards have been changed inside infantry training units, Ranger School, infantry battalions, to ensure that
Give me one example. Please give me an example. I get you're making these generalized statements.
Quotas to have a certain number of female infantry officers or infantry enlisted, and that disparages those women.
Commanders do not have to have quotas for the infantry. Commanders do not have to have a quota for women in the infantry. That does not exist. It does not exist. And your statements are creating the impression that these exist, because they do not. There are not quotas. We want the most lethal force. But I'm telling you, having been here for 15 years, listening to testimony about men and women in combat and the type of operations that were successful in Afghanistan and in Iraq, women were essential for many of those units. When Ranger units went in to find where the terrorists hiding in Afghanistan or in Iraq, if they had a woman in the unit, they could go in, talk to the women in a village, say, where are the terrorists hiding? Where are the weapons hiding? And get crucial information to make sure that we can win that battle. So you cannot denigrate women in general, and your statements do that. We don't want women in the military, especially in combat. What a terrible statement. So please, do not deny that you've made those statements. You have. We take the responsibility of standards very seriously, and we will work with you. I'm equally distressed. You would not meet with me before this hearing. We could have covered all of this before you came here, so I could get to the 15 other questions that I want to get to. So women, you have denigrated. You have also denigrated members of the LGBTQ community. Did you know that when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was in place, we lost so many crucial personnel, over 1,000 in mission-critical areas. We lost 10% of all our foreign language speakers because of a political policy. You said in your statement, you don't want politics in the DOD. Everything you've said in these public statements is politics. I don't want women. I don't want moms. What's wrong with a mom, by the way? Once you have babies, you therefore are no longer able to be lethal. I mean, you're basically saying women, after they have children, can't ever serve in the military in a combat role. It's a silly thing to say. It's a silly thing to say, beneath the position that you are aspiring to. To denigrate LGBTQ service members is a mistake. If you are a sharpshooter, you're as lethal, regardless of what your gender identity is, regardless of who you love. So please know this to be a true statement. So you say it was a political thing. You say it undermined us, social engineering. I don't know why someone having to publicly say or not publicly say who they love is social engineering. I think having that policy in the first place was highly problematic. And as you said in your statement, do you agree anybody should be able to serve in the military if they meet the standards?
Senator, as the president has stated, I don't disagree with the overturn of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Great, because I don't want you thinking, can't serve if you're a mom, can't serve if you're LGBTQ, and then last, can't serve if you're a leftist. The statements you said about people who have views differently than you, that we're the enemy, are you saying that 50% of the DOD, if they hold liberal views or leftist views or are Democrats, are not welcome in the military? Are you saying that?
Senator, I volunteered to deploy to Afghanistan under Democrat President Barack Obama. I also volunteered to guard the inauguration of Joe Biden, but was denied the opportunity to serve because I was identified as an extremist by my own unit for a Christian tattoo.
Thank you very much. Senator Gillibrand,
it's an Iron Cross.
Right. Well, can you shed some light on what that reference is, Clay? Or CQC, sorry?
Okay, Iron Cross is just something from Nazi Germany days. It's something that represents white supremacy.
Yep. That's what I've heard too.
Like it's blatantly obvious, and he doesn't understand that having that tattooed on your body. First of all, tattooing anything on your body is a big decision, yes. Right? It's gonna be there forever. And tattooing an Iron Cross, obviously, it's gonna scream to people that you're not a child. You know, either anti-Semitic, racist, or just for white supremacy in general. Like, that obviously is going to scream that to people that are educated on the matter. Like, and you're shocked? Really? You're shocked by that? Like, come on. Like, right. What else are people going to think with you having that on your chest? Now, I understand there's a lot of people that have that tattooed on them. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that have that tattooed on them because they think it looks cool and don't understand what it actually means. And it might be that case for him. But you need to stop and do your research. This is more further evidence that people on the right have struggled to do research about things and understand things on a deeper level. Because there's a chance that he just got that just because he thought it looked cool.
Yeah, and I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, it's this sort of like defense of it without acknowledging I understand that this is offensive in some capacity to other people, and then just why can't he just say I understand that, I acknowledge that, and I understand why it was concern for my from my unit or whatever, but like here's what it means to me. Instead he just takes this victimized defense of it, as many Republicans, and I hate to say it, Christians do. It's built into the Christian psyche of victim to be a victim.
Yeah. And all he has to say, he could even say that. He could even say, like, I was young when I got it. I thought it looked cool. And I didn't know what it meant. I do now, but it means this to me now that I know more about it. Right. And that would provide
own it. He can still own it and acknowledge the mixed messaging from it. Go ahead.
And that's a deeper dive into the male psyche. Is like he doesn't want to do that because he thinks that admits a weakness, and any type of admission that he's in the wrong, he thinks of as a weakness, and that's a problem because that's one of the main things that we try to do here is reach out to the young men, because young men, quite frankly, don't have a strong model anymore for like what actual masculinity is. Men take things like philosophical, like stoicism and whatever, and they extract certain parts out of it to get this idea of what a man is now with young men. And they think of just strength and being a protector of the family, things like that. And he's the same way. Is Hegseth's the same way? They're taking pieces of psychological things that makes men men, and not taking the more important critical parts of things, like stoicism, which is a philosophical way of thinking, really made famous by Marcus Aurelius, a famous emperor in Roman times, who was also, by the way, a great military leader, very good military leader. But they don't take the important stuff out of it, like self-reflection, emotional maturity, things like that, because men see emotion as weakness. And unless you're, as a man, unless you're able to acknowledge that, if you cannot self-reflect and understand that, hey, being emotional and vulnerable is not a weakness, it's actually a strength, because it provides learning and a way to grow. Once you understand that, you can have relationships with anybody and be successful in your relationships. And that's where that whole alpha male thing comes from. And he thinks the exact same way as these young men. He feels like he's being targeted by women, because, let's be quite frank, all of his comments about women comes from this idea that because of, in the media, women have gained a lot of things, like I'd rather choose the bear thing. Like,
yes.
So they feel victimized, which I understand. Men feel victimized by it because they don't understand that their own behaviors perpetuated, rape culture and things like that. Right. And you have to self-reflect and understand how's my behaviors toxic? How are they affecting the women near me and everything like that? And is the way I'm acting, is that why women are disgusted by me? Why they don't want to be around me? Why they don't want to have a relationship with me?
Right.
Is this why all my relationships end in a toxic, violent way? Like, you need to self-reflect and understand that being that hard, cold, emotionless dickhead is not getting you anywhere. You have to open up. You have to be emotional. You have to show those vulnerabilities, because, quite frankly, women love vulnerabilities. Women love that you're willing to show your vulnerabilities and your insecurities.
Yeah. They don't want somebody with a victim complex, but obviously, like, knowing when to sort of to stand your ground and be like, I'm right about this and here's why, and being able to lay that out in a way that's not overly self-deprecating, or I guess not overly self-grandirizing and whatnot. Then also knowing, what, hey, babe, dear, honey, darling, whatever, hey, I didn't understand before. I now recognize that, why you feel this way about this topic or this behavior of mine. I, value our relationship above my own personal experience, past experiences and these ideals that I've held on to, and I want to improve for the sake of our relationship. That's what it takes. Is it's figuring out, when you cross a line and recognizing it and owning up to it, and pacifism, again, when it comes to other men's behavior, pacifism can be a detriment as well. That's something that took me a lot longer to learn, is that, not saying anything when men are exhibiting this overly masculine, like, we'll say misogynistic type behavior, not speaking up, not doing something about that. Pacifism is also not going to help you in your conquest and your in your relationships with women, whether it be friends or more serious relationships. So,
Yeah,
anyway,
and saying something to people that being like this overly masculine, quotation marks around that, like you're not actually being overly masculine. You're being a fucking dickhead, and you should speak against it. And quite frankly, most of these men that you challenge on this masculinity thing are actually cowards and are going to back down.
They will wither and crumple up when you expose their childishness, their hypocrisy. Yeah. They will crumple, and you'll be the one that's like, wow, he's actually a strong guy. he's a good guy. He's a strong-willed guy.
Yeah,
precisely.
Anybody that views this stream, like, have you ever been to a store and you like are checking out and you see some dude just being a dickhead to a female cashier, just being an absolute dickhead, and like, saying, I want this, I want that, you got to do this, do that, trying to get them to like do something that's against like a store policy or something like that. But as soon as they call like a manager up and it's like a man, or even like if it's another cashier that's a man and they walk up over there, you notice how their voices change, like their tones change, and they start acting more professional, talking more professional, because these men, they're cowards. Part of the issue is because they see other men, they see other confrontation, and they don't want to have that confrontation because men will challenge other men naturally. But also, like, it's kind of lost my train of thought there. Like, when I just forget. I've lost my train of thought.
That's okay. It comes back to you. But yeah. It's I mean, you and I have had time to learn this. We've chances are relationships I've had in the past would have been better if I had learned some of these things sooner. While past things end for a reason, and it ended up where I'm at today. I'm a happy guy. I'm with a person I love dearly, and we get along really well. And I think we've addressed some of these types of things, and I think the person I'm with now is the person I've truly done the most growing with. And yeah, it's a process where you have to be able to take hits on the chin. You have to be able to admit to faults. You have to be able to, grow beyond yourself. And it's, when you achieve it, when you get there, when you get a better, and I'm not perfect, I still have growth to go, I'm sure. But when you get to a certain point where you're, where you recognize that the behaviors or the thought patterns of the past are what led to so much pain and in some cases suffering for an individual, when you realize how much of that was in your control and you've got a better grasp of it, and you see the results of it play out in front of you, you'll go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I ever thought that. I can't believe I ever said that. I can't believe I was that guy.
Yeah.
And
100%.
You still have to learn to love yourself after all that. So that's sometimes tough too.
Yep.
I want to say Blumenthal here. I don't think his questions are the most hard hitting, and I think he lets him filibuster a little bit, but we'll get through these real quick. The person I'm really looking forward to is Hirono here. Because
that's gonna be fun.
She was all about, I'm asking you yes or no questions, and you are not filibustering, bitch. I'm asking as many as I can get. I love it.
Appreciation and respect for your service to our country, and thanks to all the veterans who are here today, and thank you for your service as the ranking member of the Veterans Affairs Committee. I hope we can focus on doing better for our veterans and doing better in management of the Department of Defense. There's always room for improvement. I think what we need in that position is not just better, but the best in financial management, because those decisions are life and death decisions affecting the 3.4 million Americans who serve our national security and our national defense and put their lives on the line. I want to talk about financial mismanagement at the two organizations that you headed, which are the only test of your financial management that we have before this committee, the Veterans for Freedom and Concerned Veterans for America. You took over the Veterans for Freedom in 2007. In 2008, you raised $8.7 million, but spent more than $9 million, creating a deficit. by January 2009, you told donors that the organization had less than $1,000 in the bank and debts of $434,000. By 2010, revenue at the Veterans for Freedom had dropped to about $265,000. In the next year, it had dropped further to $22,000. You don't dispute these numbers, do you?
Senator, I'm extremely proud of the work me and my fellow vets did at Vets for Freedom. A bunch of young vets with no political experience, a small group, working hard every single day. We raised donor funds.
I apologize.
And
It's your
and we have letters
time.
submitted for the record from almost everyone that worked with me every single day, including our chief operating officer, who will attest that every dollar we raised was used intentionally toward the execution of our mission, which is supporting the warfighters. Exactly why we're here today, the warfighters in the Iraq surge. There was a campaign in 2008, Senator. It was Barack Obama versus John McCain. We believe John McCain would be the right person to win, and so we spent
tax
more.
returns from that organization.
I'm glad they're for the record.
I'm going to ask to be entered into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
These tax returns are yours. They have your signature. And I'm going to ask that members of the committee review them because they're the only documents. I've asked for others. I've asked for the FBI report.
Oh
that
my God. I'm already done with hearing him. I'm already done with it, man. Like, I'm sorry for interrupting. And let me just ask, can I please just ask you another question? It's like, bro, he is here to filibuster. You're being spineless. Learn a lesson from Hirono here. God damn. God damn.
Don't buy your electricity.
Of course. Don't buy my electricity. Just buy a bicycle. Buy a stationary bike and just fucking power your house with it.
Your fitness to serve, including your character and temperament and your overall qualifications to do the job. And I do appreciate the comments of Ranking Member Reed with his concerns
Slotkin, who we just saw in frame there, she does a great job too.
regarding your nomination because I share those concerns.
She's a freshman.
As part of my responsibility as a member of this committee to ensure the fitness of all nominees to come before any of the committees on which I sit, I ask the following two initial questions. First, since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
Yes.
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
Senator, I was falsely accused in October of 2017. It was
You see the way he had to think? Oh, shit.
fully investigated. And
Yeah,
I
you had to
completed
process that one.
I don't
Okay,
think
how am I
completely
answer
clear
that?
is accurate, but the fact is that your own lawyer said that you entered into an NDA and paid a person who accused you of raping her a sum of money to make sure that she did not file a complaint. Moving on. As Secretary, you will be in charge of maintaining good order and discipline by enforcing the Uniform Code of Military Justice, UCMJ. In addition to the sexual assault allegations, and by the way, the answer to my second question should have been yes. I have read multiple reports of your regularly being drunk at work, including by people who worked with you at Fox News. Do you know that being drunk at work is prohibited for service members under the UCMJ?
Senator, those
Yes
are
or no?
multiple false anonymous reports peddled by NBC
Do you
News
know
that
that
run directly
drinking on the job
contradictory to
is
the dozens of men and women at
not
Fox News
contemplated
Channel
on it?
who
I'm not
I work
hearing-
with
I'm not
who came
hearing
on
the
the
answer to my
record
question.
and said they
In your
never
opening
seen
statement,
that.
Mr. Hegseth, you commit to holding leaders accountable at all levels. That includes you, of course. And frankly, as Secretary, you will be on the job 24/7. You recently promised some of my Republican colleagues that you stopped drinking and won't drink if confirmed, correct?
So this is something that I've always I'm just going to pause it real quick. Something I've always taken issue with Hegseth here is that the statement that I saw about him promising to be sober if he gets confirmed is like it's like in any other context, in any other presidential transition team, any other circumstance, conditioning your commitment to sobriety, conditioning it on getting confirmed is a guaranteed way to communicate loud and clear to everybody that you are not actually committed to sobriety in any capacity. It's, oh, well, sure, I'll commit to be. But like, here's the thing is like, even if this guy cuts way back on it, because he's probably going to get confirmed. If he gets confirmed and he cuts way back on his drinking, he's, if he knows he's going to have a public appearance or need to make a statement on something, release a report, discuss an issue, discuss a conflict, like a combat situation, if we have to fire rockets upon somebody, so on and so forth. He's probably gonna make sure he sobers up real quick. But if there's God forbid, if there's an adversarial attack on U.S. soil at 2 a.m, and this guy gets a call that says, "Hey, you need to go to the Pentagon right fucking now," and that dude is shit faced off of a fifth of whiskey. That type of thing is going to probably come out in a report. We're not going to see video evidence of it, but that type of thing is going to come out in a report, you know, and there's going to be investigations. I think this guy's going to slip. I think he's going to slip. I don't think he's going to be able to fully separate his love for alcohol and his love for, you know, setting himself up to be, you know, a lifelong militaristic, you know, just swimming in a pool of cash, right?
Right.
And she's outlining this very well, is that, you know, he's like, all he can say is that these are quote unquote false accusations. We later hear from Tim Kaine that something else he says are false and also anonymous are actually not anonymous, that we have these people's names on the record saying, yes, I did this. And something I wanted to point out earlier too is that the Republicans, in between a lot of these rounds of questions, they'll enter into the record letters from these people in the military or whatever, letters supporting his confirmation. Note one big important detail is that these people, I would almost guarantee, while they would make a written statement of support for Pete Hegseth here, while they would make a written statement of support, almost none of these people would come to a committee like this and be questioned.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah, and like, just really think about all amount of alcoholics you've met in your life, and
A few.
yeah, like everybody's met at least 2 or 3 alcoholics in their life, like true alcoholics. Do you think any of them would just quit cold turkey?
Not a chance.
Just for a job.
Not a chance ever.
Exactly.
They'll say it. That's what they'll do, CQC. They'll fucking say it. They'll be like, oh man, yeah, I'm done drinking after this. And then like there might be a day or two where they don't do it. But then you know they're going right back in the bottle. You know it. When you know the person, you know,
It might take a couple of days to a couple of weeks, but they go back to the bottle because they don't fix the actual issue with them. They don't fix the emotional trauma, or which was probably a case for him. Is emotional trauma of some sort.
It was the experience that's qualified him allegedly for this job. Yeah. I would bet money. Yeah.
Like, being in combat usually causes some people to, you know, drink because they do not want to think about the shitty things they had to do overseas. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to remember it. He will get to that breaking point eventually where he will think, I do not want to remember whenever my buddy lost both his legs and his dick went flying 20 yards. Like, he doesn't want to remember that.
I wouldn't.
See, like, nobody wants to remember something that traumatic. And and a lot of like people that are survivors of PTSD and everything, or like have PTSD, resort to drinking, and they think that's a way to fix their problems, and they end up, you know, homeless or something, and that's how we get the homeless, you know, veteran homeless crisis.
Yeah, unhoused veterans is it's a big problem in the USA, especially.
Yeah, and or you know, you get the ones who successfully navigate it, who figure out that it's okay to be vulnerable and to remember those people because, you know, your buddy gave their life, or, you know, their legs for this country. But to Pete, that's a weakness. To him, it's a weakness, so that's why he resorts to drinking to cover up that weakness. And
I agree.
But
that's insightful.
In exchange, he just creates another weakness, which is what the senator here is doing, is attacking that weakness.
Yes.
And
she's exposing the fuck out of this.
Yeah. And you gotta own a weakness. You can't just like keep running from it. If you have PTSD, and I'm just trying to speak for military veterans out there, if you have PTSD, actually get help for it. talk to a therapist. Do not resort to drinking because it doesn't solve the problem in the end.
Hey, if
It
you
does
have
not
to,
solve
if
it.
substances are required, smoke some fucking weed, dude.
Yeah, at least that'll calm you down. Yeah.
Especially if you have nightmares or night terrors as a result of your PTSD.
Yeah, don't go to the bottle.
Smoke a bowl before bed, and your likelihood of remembering or seeing any dreams is very low, at least in my experience.
Yeah, my experience too.
Yeah, like I genuinely love typically not dreaming, because it's a what would you compare it to? It's like I guess Forrest fucking Gump. It's like, dreaming's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you got to, except it's like it might include razor blades and clowns and shit like that.
Yeah, whatever you're scared of.
Right.
Me at heights. Sometimes it includes heights. I'm like,
yes,
"Fuck."
yeah. If you're an arachnophobic person, you're going to a dream space can sometimes be, a scary place to be. So, yeah. All right. Well, she's got so many good questions here.
Yeah, she's got a lot.
We might have to pause once or twice more during her line of questioning alone. And Tammy Duckworth. I think I said Baldwin earlier. I meant Duckworth.
Absolutely.
Will you resign as Secretary of Defense if you drink on the job, which is a 24/7 position?
I've made this commitment on behalf of
Will you
men and women I'm
resign as
serving.
Secretary of Defense
I've
if
made
you
this
drink
commitment on
on the
behalf of
job?
the men and women I'm serving,
I'm not
because it's the
hearing-
most important deployment
I'm
of
not
my
hearing an
life.
answer to my question, so I'm going to move on. While you have made that commitment, you will not commit to resigning if you drink on the job. As Secretary of Defense, you will swear an oath to the Constitution and not an oath to any man, woman, or president, correct?
Senator, on multiple occasions, including as a young second lieutenant, I have sworn an oath to the
Answer is
Constitution,
yes.
and I'm proud to do so. Yes, ma'am.
In June of 2020, then President Trump directed former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper to shoot protesters in the legs in downtown D.C., an order Secretary Esper refused to comply with. Would you carry out such an order from President Trump?
Senator, I was in the Washington, D.C. National Guard unit that was in Lafayette Square during those
Would you
events,
carry
holding
out
a
an
riot
order to
shield on
shoot
behalf of my
protesters
country.
in the legs?
I saw 50
as
Secret
directed
Service agents
to
get injured
Secretary
by
Esper?
rioters trying to jump over the fence, set
Again,
the church on fire, and destroy
You know
a
what? That sounds
statue.
to me that you will
Chaos.
comply with such an order. You will shoot protesters in the leg.
They were
Moving on.
nonviolent.
President-elect has
That's
attacked
bullshit.
our allies in recent weeks, refusing
Yeah.
to rule out using military force to take over Greenland and the Panama Canal, and threatening to make Canada the 51st state. Would you carry out an order from President Trump to seize Greenland, a territory of our NATO ally Denmark, by force, or would you comply with an order to take over the Panama Canal?
Senator, I will emphasize that President Trump received 77 million votes to be the lawful commander
We're not
in chief of
talking
this
about the
country.
election. My question is, would you use our military to take over Greenland or an ally of Denmark?
Senator, one of the things that President Trump is so good at is never strategically tipping his hand. And so I would never in this public forum give one way or another
No,
direct
that's-
what order.
Just the glazing of Trump here, real quick. Just like the idea that like taking over Greenland has any strategic value in terms of the military is like just laughable. I mean, maybe technically it does, because you've mentioned a trade route, I believe, in our in last week's stream.
Yeah, there's a strategic importance to it. Yeah, but which I get the strategic of importance, but you don't have to
Let me clarify.
take the island.
Right. Let me clarify my statement is that the idea that it's in any way, shape, or form strategic to Donald Trump is laughable to me. Is that, there's any sort of strategy here other than like, hey, this billionaire wants Greenland. He paid for this, paid for that. I'm going to try to get him Greenland. What can I say? I carry out my campaign promises, to these like 9 people,
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, there's like I said before, there's a strategic importance with the melting ice. It's creating new trade routes and other avenues in the Arctic Ocean for Navy vessels, which makes sense. But just simply having bases there is enough. We do not need to take the entire island. Now, the idea of taking the entire island probably involves just the resources there. They just want the resources. Trump probably just wants to take those for the country, which is what the world has been trying or has been going away from, is trying to get away from these imperialistic tendencies and just work together.
Yeah.
But Trump doesn't want to do that. And neither does Russia. There's two similarities there that we got to note, is that Trump doesn't want to work with anybody. He just wants to take it from them. And Russia wants to do the same thing. As they're two sides of this, or really, they're just the whole same damn coin. Like, it's just fucking, it's just ridiculous. But yeah, there's strategic importance there. And just note that he's not willing to say yes or no to any of these questions.
Of course.
He is just side skirting
He can't
the entire
commit
question.
because he knows that he's smart enough to know this is that a commitment to the a real true commitment to what the Constitution or the American populace would want to hear him say is bad for him, and he knows that going at the same time he knows going against what Donald Trump wants is bad for him.
Yeah.
So,
he's not going to say something that's going to get him in trouble with Trump, but at the same time, it begs the question: how far is he willing to go for Trump? Is he going to be willing to, say fuck the Constitution? I'm going to shoot protesters in the legs.
Right. Very concerning.
Which sets a precedent, and then also creates a schism in the military later on. So it has no value. There's no value in him going against the Constitution, but there's a real chance that he will, just for loyalty's sake.
Yeah, loyalty to Trump, right? It's pretty
Yeah.
obvious.
Does the president give me in any context?
That sounds to me that you would contemplate carrying out such an order to basically invade Greenland and take over the Panama Canal. Current DOD policy allows service members and eligible dependents to be reimbursed for travel associated with non-covered reproductive health care, including abortions. Will you maintain this common sense policy?
Senator, I've always been personally pro-life. I know President Trump has as well, and we will review all policies. But our standard is whatever the president wants on this particular issue. With my advice, I will take a
if
look
the president
at it.
tells you that this
I don't
common
believe
sense
the federal-
policy will not be maintained, you will not enable our service members to seek reproductive care. So it sounds
I don't
like to
believe
me.
the federal government
I'm not
should be
hearing
funding
answers to my questions,
travel for
Mr. Chairman. I just want to note that the other area that of serious concern to me is President Trump saying that he wants to use the military to help with mass deportations, which will cost billions of dollars. And what that will do to readiness is very, very concerning. Mr. Hegseth, I have noticed a disturbing pattern. You previously have made a series of inflammatory statements about women in combat, LGBTQ service members, Muslim Americans, and Democrats. Since your nominations, however, you have walked those back on TV and interviews, and most recently in your opening statements. You are no longer on Fox and Friends, Mr. Hegseth. If confirmed, your words, actions, and decisions will have real impacts on national security and our service members' lives. There are close to 3 million personnel in the Department of Defense, $900 billion budget. I hardly think you are prepared to do the job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That wasn't a question, Mr. Hegseth. Thank you, Senator Rono. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, we don't need to hear his responses if he's not willing to, to me, I don't think it's a tough ask. It shouldn't be, right? To imply that, Tim Kaine, baby. I loved Tim Kaine's line of questioning here. It seemed like it was hard for me to understand where he was going, but then seeing where he landed, it was really impactful. And I think it speaks a lot to oaths and commitments, right? Which is, this is one of the utmost important factors of a position like this, is what your loyalty and your commitment and oath and what you swear an oath to, or who you swear an oath to. And to me, Tim Kaine really exposes those, not just by framing hypotheticals or using things that Donald Trump has indicated or said, or even using Pete's own words. He uses facts about Pete's life, right? He establishes a timeline. It's good. Anyway, I shouldn't preface it. I know what he says. It's good. But we'll get into that here. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to what Hirono said before we get to Tim Kaine?
No, she was pretty good.
She did great.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I like the whole, don't let him filibuster. Just be like, you know what? You're not answering my question. I'm going to take it as this. And then she she instills the narrative like that you're not going to commit to not shooting protesters in the leg if ordered to do so. You're not going to commit to not invading fucking Greenland just because Trump and maybe a billionaire he knows wants it. She did really well. And I think we see that from a few other Democratic senators throughout this. So especially Tammy Duckworth.
Mr. Chairman, and
I'll be right back.
congratulations on your nomination, and thank you and your family for your service and sacrifice.
Thank you, Senator.
Now for the most important question you will receive all day. In 1935, before the Congress, the father of
what the hell?
United States Air Force, General Billy Mitchell, was
Yes, I didn't
Senate.
go far.
Nobody wants an extremist or racist in our military, but one of the most disgraceful and shameful things I've seen over the past 4 years as a senator on this committee and as a Marine Corps Reserve officer was on day one, the Biden administration played up a false and insulting narrative that our military was chock full of racist and violent extremists. This reached a pinnacle in this committee when Biden's Undersecretary of Policy, Colin Kahl, the number 3 guy at the Pentagon, testified that one of his top goals would be to, quote, ending violent extremism and systemic racism within the ranks of the military. He had no data on this. The media loved it, fanned the flames, wrote baloney stories on this false narrative. Disappointingly, some of my colleagues on the other side.
I think it'd be silly. I just want to comment on this because I remember some of this, and I think that we hear something similar later from another Republican. There might be a couple of Republicans we choose to actually hear from on this, just to sort of expose what what we feel or what we understand are the lack of truth to some of these questions and statements, the basis for some of these things. Like what he just outlined, it's like, to me, and like, our military is so huge, and there's so many people that get into the military that if you look at like their demographic or geodemographic background, and combine that with other factors about the person, that like to allege that there's, just because you might not have specific data or figures on who in our military is like sympathetic to white supremacy, or who might be sympathetic to other like sort of right-wing extremist perspectives, to say that those people simply don't exist in our military is just such a stretch to me. It's an even bigger stretch than the Biden administration saying, hey, there's a lot of these people in here. So
my military experience, there is a lot of racist, xenophobic, homophobic people in the military. A lot of people in, say, like, especially like the infantry, like in combat roles, usually to get into those combat roles, it doesn't require like much education wise. You don't have to be a smart person to be able to get into the infantry. You just got to be able to basically run and shoot a weapon, and you can get into it. And there's a lot of people that get waivers because you have to take something called an ASVAB to be able to get in.
yes, heard of
The
it.
ASVAB is a test, and it tests your intelligence. Bot in the chat.
Yes.
But yeah, they test your intelligence with the ASVAB, and there's a lot of people that get waivers that get into the military because they are not smart enough to get in there. And a lot of those people are just, they come from these small towns in, say in my case, Bumfuck, Arkansas, and you get there and there's people saying like, are just like me, but are saying like racist and homophobic and fucked up things that, now the military is kind of sick and fucked up, so a lot of guys just laugh about it instead of like addressing that it's an issue because they're young and stupid. So they sit there and they just laugh about it and not address the issue. They just let them be racist and fucked up. And that's a problem. And it exists in our military. People need to realize like there's some really racist people in there. Like I'm talking about really racist. Like I knew some NCOs that would not promote dudes just because they were black. Like, that was a thing. Like, and
Just like in the workplace. Yeah, it's a thing.
yep, they didn't get a promotion until that person left or that NCO left. Like, that's just the way it was. There was literally platoon sergeants just being openly racist, and nobody was doing anything about it.
Yeah.
And soldiers don't bring it up to like HR departments or anything like that because of the fear of the repercussions from upper leadership. So it never gets exposed because there's a lot of inherent racism in the leadership.
Now, I'm asking a question just because I've only experienced corporate America. There are typically a lot of companies have a policy of they have like a zero tolerance policy of retaliation, which is what you're describing. Does the military have such maybe they have a statement on it, or maybe they have a
They do,
but is it not well enforced? Is that what you're saying?
it's not enforced basically at all.
There you go.
And people, it's not only that it's not enforced, but people will find ways to skirt around it, expose loopholes and things like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That you referenced a minute ago that occurred in Monterey, California in October 2017. At that time, you were still married to your second wife, correct? I believe so. And you had just fathered a child by a woman who would later become your third wife, correct?
Senator, I was falsely charged, fully investigated and completely cleared.
So you think you were completely cleared because you committed no crime. That's your definition of cleared? You had just fathered a child 2 months before by a woman that was not your wife. I am shocked that you would stand here and say you're completely cleared. Can you so casually cheat on a second wife and cheat on the mother of a child that had been born 2 months before, and you tell us you were completely cleared? How is that a complete clear?
Senator, the child's name is Gwendolyn Hope Hegseth, and she's a child of God, and she's 7 years old.
And she was,
and you
This fucking disgusting shit right here. You know what? Most Christians, you guys can go fuck yourselves, because I grew up with a man like this, where it did not matter that, you know, he hasn't in any way publicly okay, like so, you know, maybe someone lives a bit of a private life, and maybe there's some differences there in terms of who you owe something to. I don't know, whatever. But like, when you're a public figure such as this guy, and you are, again, you're being nominated for one of the highest responsibility, highest impact jobs in the world, and let alone the country, and you will not even simply own up to something that you could probably easily play off as a big oopsie, a mistake, whatever. You know, you could elaborate on how you've grown from this. Even I think that there's a way you could handle this where you don't just sort of read off the full name of your child. By the way, good job doxing your kid, you fuck. Including the middle name. I know names are public record, I guess, but like, you know, throwing that middle name out there makes it a lot easier in my understanding. It makes it a lot easier to identify somebody. And he read off her age too, which is like, okay, like, you know, think about your kid that you're using to put yourself on a pedestal right now. And you are literally selling her identity. You're throwing her identity under the bus, and you throw in there this child of God bullshit. You know, and I think we hear him later in this line of questioning say something about like, I've been forgiven in the eyes of my Lord and Savior. It's like these people use God, use the Bible, use their Christianity to absolve themselves of all wrongdoing, and it doesn't matter.
Not only that.
Yeah.
Not only that. They're not just absolving themselves. They're also garnering favor points because you on the right is Christian.
Yes.
Because they say God, just because they say God, she's a child of God. I am been remade by my Lord and Savior. They're saying those things just to garner points from you. I guarantee you can ask this dude to quote give you an actual quote from the Bible, and he couldn't tell you. He couldn't tell you because he doesn't
Probably
read the
not.
Bible.
Not something, yeah, something that isn't obvious. Like, oh, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you gave me John 3:16. It's like, cool.
Oh,
Did
yeah,
you,
yeah, come on, yeah, like,
did you get that off
give
the
me an
back of your,
actual
did you get
quote.
that off the back of your milk carton at the grocery store, dude? What the fuck? Like,
Yeah, like give me an actual quote here. Like,
yeah.
they can't get you an actual quote that isn't mainstream. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Like,
Cheated on-
they're just trying to garner points from you, and you can. I know it's hard to acknowledge. Like, it's really hard, especially if you're on the right wing, to admit to yourself. It's not. It's not an attack on you. Let me be clear. I'm not attacking you for being Christian, and you know, you're not either. You're not trying to attack people because they're Christian, right? You could care less if they're Christian, but whenever you use it as a political tool and a way to try to absolve your past mistakes, or in Christian case, sins, to absolve your sins, just so you can get into a position of power, is a big red flag. It's hard to admit. I understand a lot of right-wing people there. If you listen to this, I know it's hard. It's hard to like say to yourself that you're wrong for supporting this person. It's really hard, and you don't want to do it. Like, but you need to stop and actually think about it, reflect on it, understand, like, man, maybe like this person just, the amount of alcohol they've been drinking, like, and I know he says these people are anonymous and everything that have, made these allegations, but man, I went on Google and I found these people's names that had said these things, and they worked at Fox and everything, and I even found out they all voted for Trump. Like, it's all those things start mounting up. Like, you start thinking, like, okay, if they're a supporter of Trump and they said that he goes to work drunk, like, I mean, you got to start like pulling all these pieces together and thinking about it. It's hard to admit. If you're a Christian Republican out there, it's very hard, and it's okay. It's okay to be wrong and thinking about somebody. It's a stretch for you to make those connections with Trump, but at least do it here for Pete Hegseth, who could single-handedly destroy our military-industrial complex if he follows one of the ridiculous orders from Trump.
Right. Like, I mean, I think we all expect Donald Trump to, when it's convenient for him, we expect him to pretty much golf away his second term and let Elon Musk run the show. Wink, wink. We all suspect that of Trump. Hegseth is not going to be able to just, go crawl into a fucking into like his den or whatever and just, drink his life away while stuff's going on. They're going to be like, he's going to be getting called in. He's going to be getting, he's going to have to make decisions on things. He's going to have to make budgetary, reconciliations and whatnot. Like, he's going to be stepping into something very important here. And it seems to me like he's banking pretty heavily on not lasting in the role very long, getting his cushy little contractor job on his, as he leaves this position. And Trump's just going to probably end up picking somebody else. That's what it kind of feels like is about to play out here. So we'll see how long he lasts, but Tim's got some more good questions for us here.
The mother of that child less than 2 months after that daughter was born, didn't you?
Those were false charges. Well, it was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared. And I'm so grateful for the marriage I have to this amazing woman behind me.
You've admitted that you had sex at that hotel in October 2017. You said it was consensual, isn't that correct?
Anything,
You've admitted that it was consensual, and you were still married, and you just had a child by another woman.
Again,
how do you explain your
completely
judgment?
false charges against me. Fully investigated, and I was completely clear.
You have admitted that you had sex while you were married to wife 2 after you just had fathered a child by wife 3. You've admitted that. Now, if it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
It was a false claim then and a false claim now.
If it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
That was a false claim.
Yes.
So you
talking
can't,
about a hypothetical.
So you can't tell me whether someone who has committed a sexual assault is disqualified from being Secretary of Defense?
Senator, I know in my instance, and I'm talking about my instance only, it was a false claim.
But you acknowledge,
And it was
but
fully
you acknowledge
investigated.
that you cheated on your wife and that you cheated on the woman by whom you had just fathered a child. You have admitted that.
I will allow your words to speak for
You're
themselves.
not retracting that today. That's good. I assume that in each of your weddings, you've pledged to be faithful to your wife. You've taken an oath to do that, haven't you?
Senator, as I've acknowledged to everyone in this committee, not a perfect person, not claiming to
But
be.
no, I just asked a simple question. You've taken an oath, like you would take an oath to be Secretary of Defense in all of your weddings, to be faithful to your wife. Is that correct?
I have failed in things in my life, and thankfully I'm redeemed by my Lord and Savior.
This
Jesus
In
right here.
finalizing
So right, that doesn't tell me if so you're okay. So you're about to take a massive oath to the United States Constitution at the behest of the American people. And you're gonna, when asked if you are gonna take that oath seriously, you're gonna say, "Oh, this is false," and then you're gonna pivot to, what was it? He just said, "I'm not a perfect person," and then you're gonna say, "Oh well, Jesus says I'm cool, so don't worry about it." Unless you are a diehard dipshit Republican Christian who just gobbles this bullshit up all day long. Yes, he said God, he said Jesus, whatever. Unless you are that person, this is completely unconvincing. And this is the most terrifying thing about this man as Secretary of Defense in my mind, is that his oaths, his promises are not important to him. Tim Kaine is demonstrating that very, very well here, that this guy does not take something that you're supposed to promise to somebody seriously. And these are women he's saying he's in love with, and he's not maintaining these promises. And all he can say about these things is either, oh, they're false, even though it's like, okay, well, that's, your word against theirs. I can't really make a determination on that. Or you're going to say, hey, dude, I'm not perfect. I fuck up, right? Like I fuck up. It's like, okay, well, if you fuck up your oath to the Constitution, the consequences are relatively dire, I'd say, right? Like you're talking people dying, Americans dying, whether they be soldiers or not. It is so unbelievably disqualifying, and it just irritates the piss out of me that loyalty to Trump is all that's going to matter in this new regime.
Yeah, like for example, let's say Trump gives an order to execute civilians that are that didn't vote for him or something like that. Like, and he follows through with the order. If he follows through with the order and orders the military to do so, he's going to say it's fine. My Lord and Savior says it's fine.
Exactly.
People that you love and hold dearly, because I guarantee you have somebody in your family that's liberal, that's Democrat, and you love them to death because their family are going to get killed just because in the name of God. That's what. Yep, and that's what. Think about it. That is what a lot of you people are very xenophobic. You hate Muslims and extremist Muslims. They kill people in the name of their God. You're doing the same thing. You're going down to their level, right? You're getting to the extremist points of view. You got to understand that. Like, just because they say God does not mean they actually upholds God's values or Jesus's values. And doesn't mean that it's okay.
The moral stance on that for these people it matters a lot less what your moral basis is for it, and it matters more which team you're on.
Yeah, exactly. It's not about the Constitution it's not about the Constitution
At all.
or at all. It's just about your religious views and winning.
Yeah.
That's all it's about.
Yep.
Like this country is all about religious freedom and be able to practice whatever religion you want, right? But you do not get to take your religion, take the extremist parts of it, and kill people just because they don't believe in your religion, or hurt people in any way just because they don't believe in your religion. or hurt people that believe in other religions. This country is all about religious freedom. That's what it was founded on. That is the whole reason that people even came here from England, is to get away from the church there, because they wanted to come here and practice their way. You cannot just go back on that, because you're going against a fundamental American idea, and that makes you anti-American, whether you like it or not. You can
Well
say
said.
no, it doesn't, but it makes you anti-American.
At the very least, unpatriotic.
Yeah, it makes you very unpatriotic.
Yeah.
You claim to be patriots, but you can't call yourself a patriot and do
They
something
don't know what it
unpatriotic.
is. Yeah, a lot of these guys just don't know what it means to truly be patriotic. It's more about of a performative standard than it is any sort of moral.
Well, yeah,
standard.
it's just gotten so attached with nationalism. That's
Yes, right.
all.
People
what's all happened to
people
it.
don't recognize the distinction anymore, and for a lot of reasons. But
Mhm.
yeah, man, just something that I love hearing. I don't know at this time who like to credit in terms of like bringing this to light or referencing this, whether it's creators or whether it's just the original source material. But I've heard something to the effect of like that when it comes to how the framers of our Constitution, how the founders of this country, how they felt when it came to the religious demagoguery and whatnot that they faced. It wasn't just about freedom of religion to practice whichever religion you choose. It's about also freedom of religion, where you don't have to be religious at all. And when you constantly frame people who are not religious or of other religions, when you constantly keep this narrative floating, you keep pushing this narrative that they are in some way, shape, or form less or not to be valued in some capacity, you're going to justify the most heinous actions against these people, and you're going to watch it happen, and you're going to be like, yep, that's the way God wanted it. That's how it has to be. And this is we see this play out. This has played out in history over the last hundreds of years. We've seen it happen over and over and over again. And like we still aren't even 100 years removed from the last time that type of, that these types of heinous actions were justified upon a people. Referring to of course, the Holocaust and what Hitler did. And it feels, in a lot of ways, it feels like the United States is just rapidly careening in the same direction because of guys like fucking Pete Hegseth.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There's multiple instances in history of things that have been done to humans in the name of Christianity. Evil things that have been done. That could be the Crusades, or the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition. People were killed, tortured, and executed en masse because of religious difference and because of extremist Christian ideologies. And the most recent example is Hitler. So we gotta keep those in mind, that you don't want to drift down that path. If you're a Republican, your goal is to not drift that way. You don't want to. You want. I understand like a lot of things that Christians try to do is convert people. I know that's like a goal, because you want to spread, quotations here, Jesus's love and everything like that.
The word of God.
Yeah, you want to spread the word of God. I get that, but you cannot resort to extremes to get your points across. One, in the long term, it creates resentment towards that religion in the long term. So eventually you will get people that will just want to kill you more than you want to kill them, and they're going to come after you. That's why we have extremist Muslims now. And you do not want to drop to their level. Don't you want to be the religion that is viewed at a higher standard? Don't you want to be that way? You don't want to become extremist, right? Now, but y'all don't see it that way. You probably don't even see that there's actually good Muslims out there, that people that actually practice their religion correctly and are not extremist. Like there's Muslims out there that do not go out and, do car bombings. You know that, right? Like, but there's Christians that are moving towards like the Nazi way of thinking, that extremist Nazi way of thinking, that Christian people are better than others. They're better than people that don't practice religion, and they're better than people that practice other religions. You are getting that idea in your head, and you're starting to turn those people that don't practice your religion and are not Christian, you're starting to turn them into objects, not people anymore. So in the long term, it's going to fuck you really hard. But in the short term right now, with the way you've seen it, you're thinking that, oh, this is awesome. Like, we got a guy in office that's going to put God back into the United States. That's what you're thinking. But in the long term, you're just creating more resentment.
Yeah.
You're creating more problems in the long run. That's how humans work. And listen, the way religions work, unless you adapt, like religions die. And you creating resentment with people is going to kill your religion.
Organized religion is losing young people by an astounding margin. Like,
yeah,
you see the generational breakdown of people who claim to be religious in any capacity, and you look at Gen Y, Gen Z. I mean, they're like, we don't want any fucking part of that shit. By and large, there's still some of us that do, but like most of us are like, we don't like it, we don't want it.
Because there's been resentment built up.
Yeah, we have this information age where we get this, we can at any moment pull up historical context, and we are made aware very early, like, and especially in like high school and whatnot, we're made aware very early that like religious dogma has existed for so long, and it's we can recognize that there's a simple viewpoint of where you can say, hey, if you practice your religion privately, or public displays of your religion are not in any way, shape, or form going to harm another individual or force them to do something that they don't want to do by their own will, by their own volition, we can recognize that private and even public displays of your religious beliefs are totally fine and harmless. And as long as we are not expected to take part in it and only just acknowledge your space and your time to do so. A good example is something I didn't experience when I lived where I lived before in Missouri, but where I've moved to now, is that the very first job that I worked when I moved up here, there was a guy who throughout the day would go into a room, like a room in where I worked, and he would lay out a rug and he would pray. And the company that I worked for allotted him that time. It's not like they didn't, as far as I know, I hope they didn't do this, but as far as I know, they didn't force it to eat into his break time. The time he was allotted for breaks throughout the day. He still worked a full day. He worked hard. He knew his shit. There was zero issue with being like, hey, let's give this guy, let's give this guy an extra 15 minutes a day spread out throughout the day to practice his religion. And he did it. He was in this other room where people typically weren't going at these times. And I think there was one time that I kind of walked through, and all I did was just shut up and just left him alone and he did his thing. And like, that's just, to see that so normalized when I hadn't seen it before was just so relieving and refreshing. And it further demonstrated to me that this idea of, obviously theocracy being a bad thing, Christian nationalism is a terrible thing for guys like this, where all he was asking for was like 15 minutes a day. And then these people, just because of that, suddenly some group wants to say, oh no, that's an infringement upon my religion because I'm a Christian. That's get the fuck out of here. That's absurd. It's ridiculous. Again, going back to Christians always have to frame that for their justifications of the authoritarian mentalities that a lot of them have, they have to play into being a victim of some sort. And to them, being a private company that's probably, I'll bet that company was owned by like majority, we'll just say probably Catholics, because a lot of them were like white and of like Irish descent or whatever, right? A lot of them are probably Catholic, Irish, and maybe Italian. For those people, if those people were to suddenly say that, hey, because we're of this faith, this guy asked, requesting as on an accommodation basis, an extra 15 minutes a day or whatever it was to practice his religion, and he's doing it in a private way that doesn't infringe upon anybody else's freedom of religion or First Amendment right in general. If they were to suddenly say that that's an infringement on them, it's like, to people like in our age group, we're like, that's absurd. What do you fucking mean? That's how, we would never subscribe to that. We just as broadly as our generation, we would never agree with that mentality of it. But if this guy were to say, take his prayer activity and suddenly he were to start like doing it next to my desk while I'm trying to maybe talk on the phone with somebody, and let's say he did it very loudly, then of course there's an issue, there's an infringement in some capacity. But you freedom of religion, of which one to practice, and freedom from religion, both very important concepts, and to see that demonstrated and for our generation to be so broadly for that type of way of doing things is to me just so it makes me optimistic, that once we're past like the Trump years, and once the boomers and the Gen Xers who keep voting this fucker in, once they're not able to vote anymore by means of getting old and fucking croaking, hey, we're going to run the show, and we're going to be a lot less focused on any sort of religious dogma and in any aspect of public life, whether it be government or what have you. So I look forward to that, and I hope that we can avoid steering into fascism so that we can continue to avoid that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Divorces from your first and second wives, were there non-disclosure agreements in connection with those divorces?
Senator, not that I'm aware of.
If there were, would you agree to release those first and second wives from any confidentiality agreement?
Senator, it's not something I'm aware of.
But if there were, you would agree to release them from a confidentiality agreement?
Senator, that's not my responsibility.
Did you ever engage in any acts of physical violence against any of your wives?
Senator, absolutely not.
But you would agree with me that if someone had committed physical violence against a spouse, that would be disqualifying to serve as Secretary of Defense, correct?
Senator, absolutely not have I ever done that.
You would agree that that would be a disqualifying offense, would you not?
Senator, you're talking about a hypothetical.
I don't think it's a hypothetical. Violence against spouses occurs every day. And if you as a leader are not capable of...
I don't think he's like understanding the question he's asking him.
There's like a degree of that.
Yeah, he's thinking that Tim Kaine is like attacking him and saying that he like physically abused people. It's not what he's saying. He's saying, do you think that should disqualify anybody from that job? That's all he's asking. It's a simple yes or no. So the fact that he is writhing from this tells me that he's guilty of something.
It explains a lot.
Yeah. That, like, for people that don't know, I won't say where I work or anything like that, but I work for a company where I mostly catch people stealing and like security type stuff and safety issues. People are guilty when they start writhing like that. There's a lot of times that I get people into an office and I question them, and I know what the answer is. I know what they did, but I start questioning them and they start writhing like that because they have some sort of guilt. There's some sort of guilt, like just from my life experience and dealing with people like that on a daily basis at my job. That just tells you that he's guilty of something. Like he did something physically to one of his wives before, like, and
probably while drunk. He may not normally have a tendency to
Yeah.
do that sober, but when he's shit
Yeah.
faced, oh man, maybe sometimes I just yeah, whatever.
Yeah, like he and he might hate himself for that, and that's probably why he drinks more. So, I mean, Jesus, people, like it's pretty, like, from his body language, it's pretty obvious. And I think anybody that I'd be curious on, like, an expert on, like, reading people's body language, what they would say
Sure. Yes.
on this. I would be very curious.
Yeah, I mean, and like even just acknowledging the sort of literal, if I were to try and just maybe understand what could literally be going through his mind here, is he knows here's the real thing. He knows the answer to this question is, if someone were found to have done this, would that be disqualifying? If he answers yes, he knows that the public messaging around this is that, hey, he's accused of this. Some may even be able to claim that he's credibly accused of this. And here here's the words coming from his own mouth that would be disqualifying. So he's torn between, because what does he do here? He says, absolutely, big pause, not have I ever done that. So he fucking spits out the words like he's a fucking stupid Yoda from, like Star Wars, where he switches the words around like it's Yoda-fied or some shit, because he caught himself almost saying, yeah, that would be disqualifying, which is the obvious answer. But when you're a person who may be credibly accused of such things, that suddenly becomes a detriment to your nomination, to your confirmation rather. It's very interesting, as you said, to watch him squirm, where he almost gives like a truthful answer, but simultaneously knows that it's an admission, and then has to just basically once again defend himself when the question is phrased like, hey, I'm just going to ask you a simple yes or no. If this were to be, if someone were to be found guilty of this, it would be disqualifying. And his answer is, an answer he kind of forces out of his mouth, out of seeming to sort of zigzag in his mind, is, I've never done that. It's like, yeah, bro, that answer doesn't bring me any comfort.
Yeah, little does he know, he's actually playing into Tim Kaine's hands by answering that way.
Big time. I don't think there's to tell you the truth, I don't think there's a good way to answer this question, which is why it's such a good fucking question from Mr. Kane. But ooh-wee.
The only answer and correct answer is yes, that's disqualifying.
This might be the thumbnail right here. Look at that. Oh my god. I don't know. Oh my god, that's hilarious. I don't even think I went back far enough, but I saw how good that looked, and I'm like, oh my god, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Committed physical violence against a spouse, that would be disqualifying to serve as Secretary of Defense, correct?
Senator, absolutely not have I ever done that.
You would agree that would be a disqualifying offense, would you not?
Senator, you're talking about a hypothetical.
I don't think it's a hypothetical. Violence against spouses occurs every day. And if you as a leader are not capable of saying that physical violence against a spouse should be a disqualifying fact for being Secretary of the most powerful nation in the world, you're demonstrating an astonishing lack of judgment. The incident in Monterey led to a criminal charge, a criminal investigation, a private settlement, and a cash payment to the woman who filed the complaint. And there was also a non-disclosure agreement, correct?
It was a confidential
that sigh of relief, that big breath of relief.
During an interview, you claimed that you settled the matter because you were worried that if it became public, it might hurt your career. Do you maintain that you were blackmailed?
Senator, I maintain that false claims were made against me. And ultimately,
your attorney
those
used
false
the
claims,
phrase,
I have the opportunity to attest my innocence in those false claims.
But you didn't reveal any of this to President Trump or the transition team as they were considering you to be nominated for Secretary of Defense. You didn't reveal the action. You didn't reveal the criminal complaint. You didn't reveal the criminal investigation. You didn't reveal the settlement. You didn't reveal the cash payment. Why didn't you inform the commander-in-chief and the transition team of this very relevant event?
Senator, I've appreciated every part of the process with the transition team. They have been open and honest with me. We've had great conversations between the two of us, and I appreciate the opportunity that President-elect Trump has given me.
But you chose not to reveal this, right? Because you knew it would hurt your chances. So you chose not to reveal this really important thing to the commander-in-chief and the transition team because you were worried about your chances rather than trying to be candid with the future president of the United States. Are there any other important facts that you chose not to reveal to the president-elect and his team as they were considering you to be Secretary of Defense?
Senator, I sit here before you an open book, as everyone who's watched this process.
With
big
multiple
mistake that he
non-disclosure
said
and
that.
confidentiality agreements signed
Yeah.
hands of many people who would like to comment to us. Much has been made of your workplace behavior as a leader of nonprofit veterans organizations and as a Fox News contributor. Were you fired from either of the leadership positions with the nonprofits?
I was the leader. I was the CEO of Concerned
I know
Veterans
which
for
ones,
America,
but
and
those
executive
two,
director
were
of
you
Vets for
fired?
Freedom.
Were you fired from
And
either
I
of
was
them?
never fired from a
Do you have
veterans organization.
non-disclosure agreements with either of those organizations?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator.
Also,
Many
not
of
a
your
great
work
answer.
colleagues have said that you show up for work under the influence of alcohol or drunk. I know you've denied that, but you would agree with me, right, that if that was the case, that would be disqualifying for somebody to be Secretary of Defense.
Senator, those are all anonymous false claims, and the totality
They're not- they're not
the
anonymous.
letters
We've
on the
seen-
record
they're
here,
not anonymous.
on the record.
We've
people who
seen
work with
records
me
with
at
names
Vets for
attached to
Freedom,
them.
Concerned Vets for America, and Fox News,
One of your
contributing to me
colleagues
working
said,
hard every day on behalf
One
of
of
my
your
mission.
colleagues said that you got drunk at an event at a bar and chanted "Kill all Muslims." Another colleague, not anonymous, we have this, said that you took coworkers to a strip club. You were drunk. You tried to dance with strippers. You had to be held off the stage, and one of your employees in that event filed a sexual harassment charge as a result of it. Now, I know you deny these things, but isn't that the kind of behavior that, if true, would be disqualifying for somebody to be Secretary of Defense?
Senator, anonymous false charges.
They're not anonymous. And I'll just conclude and say this to the chairman. You claim that this was all anonymous. We have seen records with names attached to all of these, including the name of your own mother. So don't make this into some anonymous press thing. We have seen multiple names of colleagues consistently throughout your career that have talked about your abusive actions.
Chairman, I
and
think he's over his
attitudes.
time. He's way over his
I
time.
now yield.
And thank you very much. I now ask.
Damn.
That's a masterclass.
That
Good
was
Lord.
he really he fucking yeah, he masterclass is I can't think of a better phrase. It was brilliant. Tim Kaine, again, like at first I was like, okay, buddy, all I'm hearing are personal attacks. But then he puts this nice bow on it of being like, you can't hold true to your commitments. And then he outlines, you can't state whether or not you have a poor sense of judgment because you can't state whether or not these behaviors would be disqualifying. He was brilliant here. There was one Republican I might actually watch. I'm gonna skip Angus King because he was just a fucking joke.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he did not deliver. Rick Scott is a worm. We're not gonna watch The Worm. Elizabeth Warren, she had some good ones. As expected, she honed back in on the statements about women, which I like that they kind of hammered that home. I love that we got plenty of other criticisms of it. What I was worried about going into this particular hearing is that all we were going to get were the criticisms of what he said about women being in combat, and that they weren't going to really dive into obviously that's a problem, but these other issues that he clearly exhibits. And Warren, I think, touches on a number of good points, including the remarks about women. So, the timeline I think is important, and nobody else laid out the timeline of how quickly he really pivoted on his opinion of women, which, as you said, people are hard to change. You don't just 180 overnight on a strong opinion like that he was so consistent on before. So she outlines that here. That'll be good.
Yeah.
Fuck. What are those?
World of Warships.
World of Warships.
Yeah.
No, I've been watching Jays too since.
1 million women currently serve on active duty in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Space Forces, and the Marines. And I have serious concerns that your behavior toward women disqualifies you from serving in this role. Now, I've been trying to get answers from you for quite some time on this. You haven't wanted to meet or to answer any of my questions, so we'll just have to do it here and dive in. I want to pick up on some of the questions asked by Senator Shaheen and Gillibrand and Hirono, and I just want to make sure we have a list of some of the facts that I think are undisputed. I'm not going to talk about anonymous sources. I'm just going to quote you directly. We've got the video. We've got it in print. So going back to January 2013, you told a Fox News interviewer that women in the military simply couldn't measure up to men in the military, saying that allowing women to serve in combat roles would force the military to lower the bar. You picked up on that same theme in 2015, making remarks on Fox News, referring to women in combat as, quote, it would erode standards. June 2024, you said on Ben Shapiro's podcast, quote, women shouldn't be in combat at all. And then, of course, we've talked about it in 2024. You published a book, and you say on page 26 of your book, we need moms, but not in the military, especially in combat units. Page 48 of your book, you claim that women should not be in combat roles because men are distracted by women. And then 10 weeks ago, you appeared on the Sean Ryan show and said,
He's
I'm
telling on
straight
himself
up just
there.
saying we should not have women in
Yeah.
combat roles. Now, I presume you recall making all these statements?
Senator, I'm not familiar with the article you're pointing to in 2013, but it underscores my argument
got the
completely, because
video.
in that 2013 argument, I was talking about standards. Standards are what it's always been about,
Let's not have
Senator.
this same fight
Always
again.
been about
I've
Senate
quoted
standards.
you directly. We've got
This is another. I just got to harp on this really quick. You know, he loves to talk about, oh, you know, he's throwing the year. Why is he throwing the year in there? Right. My claims from 2013. It's because he wants to, you know, the more he can distance himself from it, the better it looks for him. And if he can say that that's how he felt 10 or 11 years ago, there may be a certain percentage of the audience watching who will appeal to him. But let's just be extremely clear about one thing, is that 10 or 11 years ago, I guess technically 12 now because it's 2025, this fuckstick was not like, you know, a very pubescent high school boy. 10 or 11 years ago, he's a very very grown adult ass man, and is either taking on or about to start, you know, just starting his job at Fox fucking News. Like, what the fuck? A normal ass grown adult, allegedly normal grown adult, was saying that shit? That's crazy. That is literally fucking crazy. How the fact that it's 10 or 11 years old or whatever, or 12 now is
it doesn't matter.
Irrelevant. It is irrelevant. Yeah.
Yeah, he says the same. He's said the same comments in like November.
Right.
Like
You've been consistent. That's why I said that earlier. You've been consistent, dude.
Yeah, like it doesn't matter in the end. You literally said these things just a couple of months back, and you just did a 180 just for this hearing. That just
Right.
like, come on.
And the way Warren lays out that he could easily flip back after confirmed is a big statement, because I think people on the right are even going to hear that and go, wow, yeah, if he changed his tune in 32 days, because she references it multiple times, if he changed his tune in that short of amount of time, he'll change it again. 100%. If it's convenient for him or Trump demands it, he'll change his tune.
the video. We're happy to show it. But I want to be clear here. For 12 years, you were quite open about your views, and your views were consistently the same. Women are inferior soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and guardians. And in case anyone missed the point, and these are your words from 10 weeks ago, women absolutely straight up should not be permitted to serve in combat. And I notice on each of these quotes, those are said without qualification. It's not by how much you can lift or how fast you can run. They don't belong in combat,
Poking
period.
holes in the standards argument.
And then on November 9th, 2024, just 32 days after your last public comment saying that women absolutely should not be in combat, you declared that, quote, some of our greatest warriors are women, and you support having them serve in combat. Now, that is a very, very big about face in a very, very short period of time. So help me understand, Mr. Hegseth, what extraordinary event happened in that 32-day period that made you change the core values you had expressed for the preceding 12 years?
Senator, again, I very much appreciate you bringing up my comments from 2013, because for me, this issue has always been about standards. And unfortunately, because of some of the people that have been in political power for the last 4 years, priorities other than standards, lethality, and meritocracy have driven decision-making.
I'm quoting you from the podcast. Women shouldn't be in combat at all. Where is the reference to standards, that they should be there if they can carry, if they can run? I don't see that at all, Mr. Hegseth. What I see is that there's a 32-day period in which you suddenly have another description about your views of women in the military. And I just want to know, what changed in the 32 days that the song you sang is not the song you come in here today to sing?
Senator, the concerns I have, and the concerns that many have had, especially in ground combat units, is that in pursuit of certain percentages or quotas, standards have been changed. And that makes the combat more difficult
Let me make a
for everybody
suggestion
involved.
about what happened in that 32 days. You got a nomination from President Trump. Now, I've heard of deathbed conversions, but this is the first time I've heard of a nomination conversion. And I hope you understand that many women serving in the military right now might think that if you can convert so rapidly your long-held and aggressively pursued views in just 32 days, that 32 days after you get confirmed, maybe you'll just reverse those views and go back to the old guy who said straight up, women do not belong in combat. Now, Mr. Hegseth, you have written that after they retire, generals should be banned from working for the defense industry for 10 years. You and I agree on the corrosive effects of the revolving door between the Pentagon and defense contractors. It's something I would have liked to talk with you about if you'd come and been willing to visit with me. But the question I have for you on this is, will you put your money where your mouth is and agree that when you leave this job, you will not work for the defense industry for 10 years?
Senator, it's not even a question I've thought about, because it's not one.
Right now.
It's not one. My motivation for this job.
I understand that. I just need a yes or no here. Time is short. I just need a yes or no.
I would consult with the president about what the policy should be.
In other words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. You're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one, let us just be clear, in charge of the generals. So you're saying sauce for the goose, but certainly not sauce for the gander?
I would want to see what the policy of the
Oh, I'll
president is.
bet you
Thank,
would.
thank you, Senator Warren.
Oh God.
I'm not a general. Yeah, you're even more unqualified than a general. You are a fucking major.
It's like
You
dude, oh,
fucking idiot. Like you just like made yourself fucking sound even more ridiculous. You are a fucking major. Congratulations, you got a CIB and a Bronze Star. You know what those fucking means? Nothing. Literally, that medal, that Bronze Star, it literally is a participation
I
medal.
was just
Congratulations.
about to say that phrase. I was like, oh no, is it a participation trophy?
Oh yeah, it's a participation trophy. Like, good
funny.
lord. As,
I don't.
as a military member, like I know other military members like heard that, and like when veterans were just like, "What the fuck? That's not even like a good medal. Like, get the fuck out of here." You got a CIB. Yeah, so does everybody else that sees combat. Congratulations. God damn. It's not like that crazy. But, you know, regular civilians, they're right wing, are not going to understand that.
Yes, good point. Yeah. I think Warren did a good job. She was very concise too. I don't think her question time frame was very lengthy at all. But I mean, the fact that she did that first round with his statements on women, how she didn't just let that go on and linger. She put a nice, concise, you know, this is my conclusion on this. And then jumped right into that last part. I already forgot what it was, and even though you were just talking about it. About the becoming a you know, joining the defense industry right after he's like, you know, again, he gives this answer that I'm sure in his head sounded great, but I haven't even thought of that question. It's like, dude, what the fuck do you mean you haven't even thought? You've been nominated for this position for X amount of time, and you haven't thought, wow, if I am out of this role in 6 months or whatever, like the Trump cabinet tends to go, it's a revolving door, as we recall. The fact that he hasn't even considered what if I'm offered a job in that way, like either he has considered it and that's what he's hoping for, as I mentioned earlier, or you know, which it's like him saying I haven't even thought of that is like such an obvious, like that's like, oh my god, that's like hey, did you eat this leftover dessert I had in the fridge? Like your wife is asking you, did you eat this leftover fridge? You'd be like, a cheesecake? I didn't know there was a cheesecake in the fridge. No, what do you mean? That's exactly what he's doing. Like the obvious lie. I don't, oh my God. I don't remember how Gary Peters' questions went. If they're kind of soft, we'll probably try and move on to find maybe, I want to say we get Tammy Duckworth next. But he might have had some good questions here.
Eating away at the fabric of what has always made this country great, about bringing people together from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of experiences. And we know that in our motto, together as one, we are strong. And so we in this committee, and certainly I speak for myself, but I think I speak for many of my colleagues, want to take partisanship out of this proceeding as much as we can. I'm not naive. It's out there. I get it. But we've got to try to take that out. And I want you to know that as a member of this committee, I have voted in a bipartisan way for secretaries of defense. I voted for 2 secretaries of defense when Donald Trump was previously president. We had those 2. We had, I think, 5 total secretaries of defense during that 4-year period. So we want to keep that in mind as to what we might see in this coming administration. But I voted, and we voted by a big margin for those folks as well. But part of that was the process and having an opportunity to get to know the person and understand their qualifications and understand the standards. You know, I made repeated requests to meet with you prior to this meeting. I know many of my other colleagues also wanted to meet with you. I did that with the other nominees that I was happy to vote for. I thought they were highly qualified individuals and true professionals. And yet I could never get a meeting with you. Was there a reason you were afraid to have one-on-one meetings with some of my colleagues before the hearing?
Senator, I know there was a great deal of outreach to multiple offices. Schedules get full. There's a lot going on.
I was ready.
And I welcome the opportunity,
I was
pending
ready.
my schedule, to have an opportunity to sit down.
I was ready. It would have been so much better to have that opportunity to talk beforehand. I think that's a big mistake, and it doesn't set us on a good course when you refuse to meet with people and have a professional conversation about the huge challenges that we face at the Department of Defense.
my colleagues, the folks who introduced you and others, the chairman has mentioned about the management of the DOD as a concern, cost overruns, delays on weapons systems. We need strong management at the Department of Defense, first and foremost. We've got to have someone who's going to grab the reins and give the taxpayers value for having the most lethal fighting force in the world that defends freedoms, but we got to do it in an efficient way. I've heard about the jobs you've had in the past. Let's just talk about qualifications. I know you had 2 previous positions. How many people reported to you in those positions?
Senator, at Vets for Freedom, we were a small upstart. Our focus was
just the number,
working
please.
on Capitol Hill, going back to the battlefield,
Just the number,
warfighters.
just the number, please.
We probably had 8 to 10 full-time staff and lots of volunteers.
So you had 8. Has there been any other? We've heard about the 2, and certainly there's been a lot of talk about the mismanagement, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just curious. I won't go into that. Just curious. So you had 8 there. What's the largest number of people you've ever supervised or had in an organization in your career?
Not 3 million. Senator.
No, I don't expect that. Very few people have ever had that experience. But how many? It's a straight up question.
I think we had over 100 full-time staff at Concerned Vets for America, roughly, with thousands of volunteers.
So 100
I was
people.
also a headquarters company commander, which would have been
that's fine.
a couple of hundred.
Couple-
Nothing remotely near the size of the Defense Department, I would acknowledge that.
Actually, not remotely near even a medium-sized company in America, let alone a big company in America, especially a major corporation. And we're hiring you to be the CEO of one of the most complex, largest organizations in the world. We're the board of directors here. I don't know of any corporate board of directors that would hire a CEO for a major company if they came and said, I supervised 100 people before. They'd ask you, well, what kind of experiences you had? We need innovation. Can you give me an experience or your actual experience of driving innovation in an organization? Give me an example of where you have done that.
My goodness, Senator, absolutely. At Concerned Veterans for America, we created the Fixing Veterans Healthcare Task Force, a bipartisan task force that had never been done before, to create policy, to drive policy change on Capitol Hill that organizations fought ferociously against. We got the VA Accountability Act passed and the Mission Act passed in a way that a nonprofit of our size, veterans organization, has never done. And that's testified in all the letters that we put forward to the committee, which are on the record.
I have limited time. Thank you for that. Give me an example of where you've driven down cost. I've heard the examples that Senator Blumenthal gave. The cost was a real problem for you in your 50-person organization that you actually raised a lot less than what you actually spent. Did you drive costs down if in a 50-person organization? Let me tell you, we've got to drive costs down dramatically in an organization of 3 million people and hundreds of billions of dollars. You don't have that experience that you can talk about. To me, this is or acquisition reform. Acquisition reform, you bring that up. Have you had experience in acquisition reform?
I've written about and studied on acquisition reform.
Have you actually done it?
Because what we need in the hands of our warfighters better change because we're not doing it well right now.
Better, and we need people who have experience actually doing that. You talk about standards. Again, I'm going to go back to a CEO of the most complex organization in the world. I don't think there's a board of directors in America that would hire you as a CEO with the kind of experience you have on your resume. You talk about standards. You talk about raising or lower. We have a problem of standards in the DOD, and we have to raise standards for the men and women who serve. Do you think that the way to raise the minimum standards of the people who serve us is to lower the standards for the Secretary of Defense? That we have someone who has never managed an organization more than 100 people is going to come in and manage this incredibly important organization and do it with a professionalism and has no experience that they can tell us that they have actually done that? I have real problems with that. This is not about other issues that are brought up. They're all very important. I'm just about trying to get things done, managing efficiently and having the best people who have demonstrated that in a large organization. And I'm sorry, but I don't see that in your background. There are a lot of other things you can do very well. You're a capable person. But you have not convinced me that you're able to take on this tremendous responsibility with a complex organization and having little or no significant management experience.
Senator, I'm grateful to be hired by one of the most successful CEOs in American history, should I be confirmed.
Mr. Hegseth.
This guy. Man, this guy looks
Oh,
like
he's a fucking.
He's
Speaking
a
of
moron. Yeah, go ahead.
Not only a moron, let's talk about a fucking dumbass that is just an immature fucking child who I think even challenged somebody to a fight in a hearing once, like try to fight somebody in a hearing.
Yes. Not even not even a colleague, a guy that they were just asking, they were questioning this guy.
This dude needs to be out of any office. He's an immature little fucking prick.
Yes.
A piece of human garbage. And I hate very few people. I hate that cock-sucking fucking moron.
Yeah.
He's one of the few people that I would see on the side of the street and I would punch him in the fucking throat and kick him in the fucking nuts. Because he's a fucking idiot. He's
bad.
He is bad. Whoever's voting this person in, if y'all are voting for this guy, you are equally as terrible as he is. You probably need to be sent out of the country. You are a God. I hate very few people, but you could tell I fucking hate this fucking man.
This guy's awful. He's sort of the I don't even know what to say. I guess you could compare his level of just woefully obvious ignorance of these things. I mean, it's egregious. Like, I know he's a liar. He's not only kind of dumb, he's also a huge liar. The
He would
reason
betray this country in a heartbeat. He would betray it in a heartbeat.
without question. Yeah.
I could see him without hesitation. If China offered him a big enough check, he would fucking do it.
Right. He would
like that.
He would
would
get his
do it for
lips.
money.
He would get his lips all over some fucking Russian boots, like easily.
Oh yeah,
easily. This guy would capitulate to whoever comes to power next, or invades us and forces themselves into
he
a
doesn't
power
love
position.
this country. He hates this country.
He
hates
does.
this
He
country.
loves
with a
himself.
passion.
He loves himself, and I think it's abundantly clear. Also, this
Yeah.
guy looks like he just did like the biggest blinker off of like a little pen, like a weed pen in the history of. He looks like he's just fucking in outer space and hating it right now. Hard to say. This guy might be farting. I'm not really sure. But
I think he's just preparing for the idiocy that's about to come out of that guy's mouth.
maybe
It's
I
like,
definitely
oh,
want to.
God.
Right. I definitely want to hear his, because this is the guy that has the question about like what is the standard issue M4 magazine capacity and all that. Because I want you and I to address that. How?
Oh yeah, this is fun. This is
This
is how stupid this guy is.
You've supervised far more people than the average United States senator.
Do you know the U.S. solar companies now?
God damn it! Always ads.
Forces, and have been in the service for, you have to be retired for at least 7 years, and Congress can weigh that. And then there's questions that the senator from Massachusetts brought up about serving on a board inside the military industry, and yet your own secretary that you all voted for, Secretary Austin, we had to vote on a waiver. Changed, but I'm not perfect. But I found somebody that thought I was perfect, and for whatever reason, you love Pete, and I don't know why. Tease in?
Yes, sir.
So do you believe you're capable of surrounding yourself with capable individuals? Running the Secretary or the Department of Defense by yourself?
I wish I could just find it.
Senator, absolutely not. Just as President Trump is assembling his cabinet, I look forward and already am in the process of building one of the best possible
feel like it
teams
was one of
you can
his last
imagine, with
questions.
decades
We'll
and
see
decades
if
of
we get it.
experience outside of the Pentagon, driving innovation and excellence, and also inside the building, knowing how to make it happen. Yes, sir.
So, in your organizations that you did have the privilege of running, did you have a board that you?
In both organizations, we had a board, yes.
Okay, and what did you do with that board? What kind of decisions did you make with them?
Those boards provided oversight and insight into decision-making.
They all have special, unique sets that maybe filled gaps that you're not the expertise in?
Yes, sir.
So do you believe you're capable of surrounding yourself with capable individuals that you're going to be able to run those same ideas by, and surround yourself with people that?
By the way, these are
smarter and
prepared
better
questions.
equipped, and maybe areas that you don't
Obviously,
necessarily
yes.
carry those expertise with?
Senator, the only reason I've had success in life, to include my wonderful wife, is because of people more capable around me and having the self-confidence to empower them and say, hey, run with the ball, run with the football, take it down the field. We'll do this together. I don't care who gets the credit. And in this case, that's how the Pentagon will be run.
Let's end with this, Mr. Chairman, about the qualifications. You got a man who has literally put his butt on the line. He served 20 years in the service, multiple deployments, has heard the bullets crack over the top of his head, has been willing to go into combat, been willing to see friends die for this country. And he's willing to still put himself through this. His wife is willing to still stand beside him, knowing he wasn't perfect, knowing that all this was going to be brought up. He's still willing to serve the country.
Yeah.
What other qualifications does he need? That'll yield back.
Thank you, Senator Mullen.
All right. Yeah. So I must have missed the.
Thank you. So before I go down this rabbit hole again, tell me something about your wife that you love.
So he asked the
Yep.
wife question that's at
For whatever reason, you love
3:12.
Pete, and I don't know why.
Right.
Don't forget about your kids.
I'm supposed to talk about my kids?
No, well, she's also the mother.
And again, he's like even coaching him through the questions. It's like really weird.
You know, do you believe that you're going to be running the Secretary or the Department of Defense by yourself?
Inside the Pentagon, driving innovation and excellence, and also inside the building, knowing how to make it happen. Yes, sir.
So, in your organizations that you did have the privilege of running, did you have a board that you?
In both
Was this not the guy that asked the question?
It might not
Secretary
been.
forgave me, my wife. But I guess that's okay because that's a Democrat Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, this guy's he was a fool. I remember his questions because they were really fucking stupid. Here we go.
Yeah, Oklahoma for you.
Right. And here's my gal.
Are qualified to be Secretary of Defense, and one of the qualifications to
I want to hear everything she
Thank you,
says.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Duckworth, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also, Secretary Mattis had to have this waiver as well. Mr. Hegseth, this hearing is about whether you are qualified to be Secretary of Defense, and one of the qualifications to answer my colleague's question is to actually win the votes of every member of this committee and to be confirmed by the United States Senate. And you need to convince us that you're worthy of that vote, because the people of the state of Illinois voted for me to be their senator so that I could cast that vote when it comes to picking who is going to be the next Secretary of Defense. This hearing now seems to be a hearing about whether or not women are qualified to serve in combat, and not about whether or not you are qualified to be Secretary of Defense. And let me just say that the American people need a SecDef who's ready to lead on day one. You are not that person. Our adversaries watch closely during times of transition, and any sense that the Department of Defense that keeps us safe is being steered by someone who's wholly unprepared for the job puts America at risk, and I am not willing to do that. With that in mind, Mr. Hegseth, I want you to try to explain to the American people, this committee, who have to vote for you, and to our troops who are deployed around the world, why you are qualified to lead the Department of Defense. We already know that you've only led the largest of 200-person organization. We already know that you so badly mangled a budget that after you left, they had to bring in a forensic accountant to figure out what went wrong. And that the largest budget you ever managed was about $18 billion. You know, that is about 51,560 times lower than the Department of Defense budget of $825 billion. $16 million is...
I think I said at least 1,000 times larger the budget. Obviously, I was way off. 51,000 times larger. Woo!
51,568 times smaller than the defense budget. Please describe to me, Mr. Hegseth, you talk about DOD passing an audit. Please describe to me a time or an organization when that you led underwent an audit. Because you say you're going to hire smarter people than you to run this audit. I'm not asking you to be an accountant. I want you to be able to tell me what kind of guidance will be given to those employees, what will happen whether or not you pass that audit. Have you led an audit of any organization? Yes or no? I don't want a long answer. Yes or no. Have you led an audit of any organization of which you were in charge?
Senator, in both of the organizations I ran, we were always completely fiscally responsible.
Yes or no, did you lead an audit?
And the way
yes
my
or no, did you lead an audit?
Stated,
yes or no? What are you afraid of? You can't answer this question. Yes or no, did you lead an audit? Do you not know this answer?
Senator,
yes
every part of my leadership of these organizations
yes
has
or
been
no, did you lead an audit?
misrepresented
I will take
from
that as a
top to
no. What were the findings? So there were no findings because you've never led an audit. What guidance did you give the auditors? None, because you've never led an audit. Nobody expects you to be an accountant, Mr. Hegseth. What we expect is for you to understand the complexity of this Pentagon budget process that is absolutely necessary to outfit our warfighters. Look, the Secretary of Defense is required to make quick decisions every single day with high-level information that's being provided for them. A Secretary of Defense has to have breadth and depth of knowledge. Right now, I am concerned that you have neither. Mr. Hegseth, what is the highest level of international negotiation that you have engaged in, that you've led in? Because the Secretary of Defense does lead international security negotiations. There are three main ones that the Secretary of Defense leads and signs. Can you name at least one of them?
Could you repeat the question, Senator?
Sure. What is the highest level of international security agreement that you have led? And can you name some that the Secretary of Defense would lead? There's three main ones. Do you know?
I have not been involved in international security arrangements because I have not been in government other than serving in the military. So my job has been to
no, the answer is, can you name one of the three main ones that the Secretary of Defense
defense
signs?
arrangements, I mean, NATO might be one that you're referring to.
Status of Forces Agreement would be one of them.
Status of Forces Agreement. I've been a part of teaching about Status of Forces Agreements.
But you don't remember to
Afghanistan.
mention it? You're not qualified, Mr. Hegseth. You're not qualified. You talk about repairing our defense industrial complex. You're not qualified to that. You could do acquisition and cross-servicing agreements, which essentially are security agreements. You can't even mention that. You've done none of those. You talked about the Indo-Pacific a little bit, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact amount of nations in that, but I know we have allies in South Korea, in Japan, and in AUKUS with Australia, and trying to work on submarines with them.
Mr. Hegseth, none of those countries are in ASEAN.
Across.
None of those three countries that you mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations. Listen.
So good.
Mr. Hegseth, we ask our troops to go into harm's way all the time. We ask them to go into harm's way. And this behind me is a copy of the Soldier's Creed, a copy that usually hangs over my desk here in the Senate. And you should be familiar with it. It's the same copy that hung over my desk at Walter Reed every single day that I woke up and fought my way back because I wanted to go back and serve next to my buddies who saved my life. The same copy, these words are repeated over and over and over again. And let me read out two things to you, two sentences. I will always place the mission first, and I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough, trained and proficient in my warrior task. Mr. Hegseth, our troops follow these words every single day, and they man up, and they pack their rucksacks, and they go to war, and they deserve a leader who can lead them, not a leader who wants to lower the standards for himself, but raising the standards for other people. And by the way, our troops already meet the standards. We ask troops to man that ship, fight that fire, fly that helicopter until their very last breath, and they do that every single day. They cannot be led by someone who's not competent to do the job. How can we ask these warriors to train and perform the absolute highest standards when you are asking us to lower the standards to make you the Secretary of Defense simply because you are buddies with our president-elect? And by the way, he has filed for bankruptcy 6 times. I'm not quite sure he's the kind of CEO you want to refer to as a successful businessman. Let me make it clear. You can't seem to grasp that there is no U.S. military as we know it without the incredible women that we serve. Women who earned their place in their units. You have not earned your place as Secretary of Defense. You say you care about keeping our armed forces strong and that you like that our armed forces are meritocracy, then let's not lower the standards for you. You, sir, are a no-go at this station.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. I would like to submit for the record.
Just phenomenal. I just to go over like her you know, she didn't ask hardly any questions, right? That's one true thing we can say about what she just did. is that she asked almost no questions. And in part because she knows, you can tell by the way she talks about these things that she knows a lot about them. The only questions she asked were, whether or not he ever led an audit, right? And she knew he would, the answer was no, I'm sure. Or she probably had inferred that the answer was likely no. She mentioned the thing with the forensic accountant having to come in and clean up a big financial mess that had been left under his leadership. So she's like, I mean, I doubt this guy's even led an audit, and she just calls him out on it, and he for sure doesn't answer, which tells everybody that the answer is no. And then the only other thing she asked him about was to demonstrate his lack of competence. I would have assumed that this guy would have done some research before this. I'm imagining that he's been told that he's going to get the votes. Don't worry about the votes, that, just get through the hearing or whatever, and you're going to be confirmed. I'm sure that that's what he's expecting and what he's being told. So if that's the truth, then maybe he would be like, I don't need to really research a lot of these security agreements and things that I would be directly involved in as a part of this. I don't know if the calculus was that he wouldn't be asked about them, or if being asked about them just wouldn't matter, wouldn't affect the outcome. But her pointing out that, the fact that I don't even know if I think she would have expected him to at least be able to mention one nation in the ASEAN Accords, whatever she's talking about. I personally don't know much about it, but I'm not trying to become the Secretary of Defense. So I'm not gonna know about it, but the fact that he names a nation that's not even in there, I don't know that she even was expecting that. But she harps on it and points it out. And then she just spends the rest of her time just outlining how woefully unqualified he is with these intricate details based on her own experience. And you can just tell the way she's talking about it, how frustrated she is that he's even nominated, how passionate she is about, these standards.
Mm-hmm.
and I
a veteran too, so of course she's going to feel passionate about it.
Yeah.
She knows how the military actually works, and seeing somebody that is so underqualified to take a job that usually requires somebody that's been in the military for 40 years to learn is just, it's insanity to her. And it should be insanity
to anybody.
Because our military is that complex and that hard to run. You can try to simplify it as much as you can, but in order to have the most sophisticated and professional and strongest military in the world, it has to be a robust, complex organization for it to be effective. And you need a leader that understands every facet of it in order for it to be effective. He's talking about standards and everything and being combat effective, but literally him being the SecDef reduces its effectiveness. If he actually cared about that, he would pull his name from the hat and
that is true.
Tell Trump to go pick an actual general that is a 4-star general.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. He, as we've established, it seems that he cares about himself first, and that's kind of that he's looking out for numero uno, which is why, I mean, that's why some of these cabinet picks I think may not actually work out for Trump, because if there's ever a point where it's like, hey, like this state government or this independent party, they've got all this evidence, they're investigating you, or this grand jury is about to indict you, kind of thing. They, just like so many that Trump previously employed into these positions, there's a good chance that they'll
They're going to separate themselves
because they're looking out for their own ass, right? And they'll take an immunity agreement to just spill the guts on everything Trump did and told them. And if we see a 2028 where we have a proper progressive president who's going to pick dude, what if in 2029 we get a turn, just because he couldn't do what his job was in Biden's term, what if we get Attorney General Jack Smith in 2029, and he's like, you know what, I'm gonna do the thing Garland didn't do, and I'm gonna not, I mean, obviously I don't want any political related things, but if Hegseth carried out an order under Trump to shoot people in the leg or kill civilians or what have you, protesters or something. Like, I think Jack Smith is the type of guy who's going to be like, yeah, we're going to make sure that gets exposed and taken down. That's the one hope, is that, these people are so self-interested that they will fold on Trump when pressure surmounts, especially if they're doing anything actually bad. So, okay, let's see. Another Republican. I don't
remember hers that well.
I was gonna say, I know I heard hers, but I don't think it was very, truly crucial or impactful. Mark Kelly, he did a good one. I think he let Hegseth talk quite a bit too, but I mean, he at least asked good questions and posed good arguments.
Being here today. Thank you for your service to this country. Thank you, Senator.
And Mark Kelly, in terms of Senate seats, he replaced John McCain, correct? Arizona?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Room with all the necessary experience to do this job, to be Secretary of Defense. We get that. It's a reflection on just how big of a job this is. What I want to understand is whether or not you bring any of the necessary experience that this job requires. And here's where I'm concerned. Senator Coleman, in introducing you, and this is a quote, he said, "He has struggled and overcome great personal challenges," unquote. You walk in here saying that you've had personal and character issues in your past, including heavy drinking, which you wrote about. And you said, and this is a quote from you, that you said, "I sit before you as an open book."
Yes.
Yet you haven't actually said what personal challenges it is that you've overcome when you've been asked about them. So I'm going to give you an opportunity here to be as forthright as you say you want to be. So while leading Concerned Veterans of America, there were very specific cases cited by individuals about your conduct. I'm going to go through a few of them, and I just want you to tell me if these are true or false. Very simple. On Memorial Day 2014, at a CVA event in Virginia, you needed to be carried out of the event for being intoxicated.
Senator, anonymous smears.
Just true or false? Very simple. Summer of 2014 in Cleveland, drunk in public with the CVA team.
Anonymous smears.
I'm just asking for true or false questions, true or false answers. An event in North Carolina, drunk in front of 3 young female staff members after you had instituted a no alcohol policy and then reversed it. True or false?
Anonymous smears.
December of 2014 at the CVA Christmas party at the Grand Hyatt at Washington, D.C., you were noticeably intoxicated and had to be carried up to your room. Is that true or false?
Anonymous smears.
Another time, a CVA staffer stated that you passed out in the back of a party bus. Is that true or false?
Anonymous smears.
In 2014, while in Louisiana on official business for CVA, did you take your staff, including young female staff members, to a strip club?
Absolutely not. Anonymous smears.
So is it accurate that the organization reached a financial settlement with a female staffer who claimed to be at a strip club with you, and there was a colleague who attempted to sexually assault her? Was there a financial settlement?
Senator, I was not involved in that. I don't know the nature of how that played out.
But you understand there was a financial settlement for a young female staffer who accused another member of the organization, not you, of sexual assault in a strip club.
We have multiple statements on the record referring to that.
But you claim you were not there when that occurred.
Absolutely not.
Now, the behavior I cited, if true, do you think that this behavior of intoxication, going into these type of establishments, women on your staff being so uncomfortable that they have to file these sort of harassment claims, do you think this is appropriate behavior for a leader?
Senator, the overwhelming majority of anyone who's worked for me, including the on-the-record statements that have been submitted to this, with their name on it, on the record, men and women who worked with me every day, are the overwhelming preponderance of evidence that testify to my leadership and professionalism in leading Vets for Freedom and Concerned Veterans for America. My leadership has been completely impugned on these veterans organizations that did fantastic work.
Mr. Hegseth, I'm not even going to go into the
and we managed our
accusations.
financial books with integrity across the board. How many people, everybody who runs the campaign?
I have limited time. I'm not going to get into the accusations that come from Fox News. And you have some of your Fox News colleagues here. There were multiple instances of accusations against you about drinking on the job.
All anonymous, all false, all refuted by my colleagues who I worked with for 10 years at 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. and everything.
The challenge here for me, Mr. Hegseth, is when there is discussion about personal challenges, and you admittedly had issues with.
So my question here, if I was Mark Kelly, and I think Mark Kelly's asking some really good questions, but my question here would be is like, okay, look at previous secretaries of defense. Was General Milley accused by anybody of any of these types of behaviors? It was Milley, right? Am I remembering correctly?
Yeah, I believe it was Milley. Yeah, hold on, I have to remember the.
Yeah.
heavy drinking.
It's hard to remember all these names because Trump went through like multiple of them too. It's the current one, Lloyd Austin. Yeah, I think the current one's Lloyd.
Correct, Lloyd Austin. Okay. Oh boy, that's from the dawn of time. Okay, so this guy had a tenure of 2 days?
Yeah.
Because, okay, so Chris Miller, so this is astonishing. Like looking at the history of this. So okay, so Mattis is the one I was thinking of. He was he was the one that served the longest under Trump's tenure. And I believe Mattis is the one who also described Trump as a fascist. This is a guy who worked with Trump for damn near 2 years. And
one of the most respected Marine generals in military history. One of the most respected generals in American history. And he called him a fascist. I
didn't know Esper was in
a
there
dictator.
twice.
A wannabe dictator.
In there twice.
No, Billy was the
was it like chief of staff or something?
Yeah, like he was like the Army God, I forgot what they call it. Army chief of staff he's like the head honcho on the Army.
Oh, okay.
Like
served as the 20th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Okay.
Yeah.
He's
as high as you can go in the Army.
Right. Have any of these guys been, I wonder if any, and I'm not going to look into each of these guys, but like, have any of these guys been accused to the extent that Hegseth has?
No.
You know, I would highly doubt it that even between all of them, you could find the same, potentially the same number of claims against Hegseth. I bet it wouldn't even be half of what has been levied against Hegseth. So absurd to just be like, I don't know, to just blow these off so easily.
Hard to kind of square the circle here. It's kind of a difficult thing to do. Let me ask you, if I have about 90 seconds left here, if you had to answer these questions about sexual assault against you and your drinking and your personal conduct, would it have been different if you were under oath?
Senator, all I'm pointing out is the false claims against me.
Okay, I take it you do not want to answer that question. I walked into this hearing this morning concerned that you haven't demonstrated adequate leadership in your civilian roles, and this is a dangerous world we're living in here. And America cannot afford a Secretary of Defense who is unprepared for that mission. I'm going to leave with concerns about your transparency. You say you've had personal issues in your past, yet when asked about those very issues, you blame an anonymous smear campaign, even when many of these claims are not anonymous. Which is it? Have you overcome personal issues, or are you the target of a smear campaign? It can't be both. It's clear to me that you're not being honest with us or the American people because you know the truth would disqualify you from getting the job. And just as concerning as each of these specific disqualifying accusations are, what concerns me just as much is the idea of having a Secretary of Defense who is not transparent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back my 2 seconds.
Thank you, Senator Kelly. I would.
Pretty good. He definitely didn't go into him with the same. Oh no, who do we have coming? So there's Slotkin. Did we have? Oh, I think it was Sheehy. This motherfucker. It was Sheehy. This was the one that asked about the M9 and stuff.
M4.
It was this motherfucker. Both those weapons. Oh my God, Slotkin did good. So we'll watch Slotkin, and then I might just even check some of this out for the memes. We missed the Missouri guy. I forgot he was. I think he was in this, and I forgot how terrible he was. Oops.
Yeah, he was annoying.
Okay, no ad yet. It might do one here.
For those who I haven't met in my 1 week that I've been sworn into the Senate, I'm a CIA officer recruited after 9/11. I did 3 tours armed in Iraq alongside the military and have worked for 4 different secretaries of defense, both Democrat and Republican, proudly, and watched them make decisions that literally determine the life and death of Americans in the dark of night. I'm also a Democrat representing a state that Trump won, right? We both won on the same ballot. So I understand that President Trump has the right to nominate his people. We are going to have policies that we disagree with. All of that, to me, comes very standard. What I think I'm most concerned with is that no president has the right to use the uniformed military in a way that violates the U.S. Constitution and further taints the military as that apolitical institution that we all want, right? And our founders designed the system so that we had posse comitatus, that we weren't going to use active duty military inside the United States and make American citizens potentially scared of their own military. We went through our own experience with that with the British. As the Secretary of Defense, you will be the one man standing in the breach should President Trump give an illegal order, right? I'm not saying he will, but if he does, you are going to be the guy that he calls to implement this order. Do you agree that there are some orders that can be given by the Commander-in-Chief that would violate the U.S. Constitution?
Senator, thank you for your service. But I reject the premise that President Trump is going to be giving illegal orders.
No, I'm not saying he will, but do you believe there is such a thing as an illegal order?
Bad
that Joe Biden
answer.
Or any other president Donald Trump could give? Is there any?
Again, and I know that, as I outlined earlier, just he has to, in his mind, he's going to have to toe a line, because if at any point, it doesn't matter if he gets 99 Senate confirmation votes, it won't happen, but it doesn't matter how many Senate votes he gets to confirm. If he gets confirmed, if he at any point loses the favor of President Trump, he's gone. He's out.
He's out.
We know this. He knows this. So he has to maintain his ass kissery to that man throughout this entire process. And that includes not giving definitive, straightforward answers on this type of question, even though to everybody else in this country, the answers to these are obvious. Did you have any additional thoughts?
Nope. I just think about them. Yeah. I can go into a whole spill about the repercussions, how the UCMJ works, and him, if he does, throw in if he does go with Trump and issues an illegal order, that's gonna cause, it probably will cause a civil war. Let's be honest, because you're going to cause a schism in the military. There's going to be military leaders that agree and will follow Trump into this, and there'll be military leaders who do not and will not follow him because it's unconstitutional.
Correct.
Then you have two sides fighting each other. It's going to lead to a broader fight and bloodshed and everything else in the end.
Possibly on American soil.
On American soil. It will lead to it on American soil. Because there is going to be people that are going to uphold the Constitution and fight for the Constitution. And then there's going to be people who are just going to obey just because Trump said so.
Right.
And that is a problem.
Yeah.
So if you're a Republican, you should see this and be like, oh, I never thought of that, because that's gonna destroy our military completely, and then you're giving exactly what our adversaries want at that point. You're giving them directly a gift, and you gotta probably call your senators and be like, hey, don't let that man in. That's gonna fuck everybody up. So
without a doubt.
That's just a quick rundown. That's not even going into detail. That's a quick rundown of what could potentially happen with an illegal order.
No, I know. And it's I think this is the question I was hoping someone would ask this entire thing, this entire hearing, and it just, we didn't get it until right at the end. Kind of crazy.
It should have been asked multiple times. And it should have been drilled.
Just repeated literally on repeat. Kelly, even Duckworth, I think, was she probably wanted to ask it. It just had so much that she was already trying to cover.
ask you to do with the uniformed military that would be in violation of the U.S. Constitution.
Senator, anybody of any party
Right.
could give an order that is against the Constitution or against the law.
Right. Okay. So, and are you saying that you would stand in the breach and push back if you were given an illegal order?
I start by saying I reject the premise that President
I
Trump will be
understand.
giving
You've done your
any
genuflecting
illegal
to him,
orders
but
at all.
This isn't a hypothetical, okay? Your predecessor in a Trump administration, Secretary Esper, was asked and did use uniformed military to clear unarmed protesters. He was given the order to potentially shoot at them. Helos flew low in Washington, D.C. as crowd control. He later apologized publicly for those actions. Was he right or wrong to apologize?
Senator, I was there on the ground.
And
I saw that.
I understand, and I respect that.
I've been there.
But
I
you're about
understand
to
the
be
level
the
of threat
Secretary of
that was
Defense.
involved in that moment. I
Was
also
he right
understand
to? So he was
legality and the Constitution.
Sir, was he
and
right
the
or
laws that
wrong
you
to
have.
apologize?
I'm not going to put words in the mouth of Secretary Esper or
No,
anybody else.
he said it himself. You don't have to. What are you scared of? Did he do the right thing by apologizing?
I'm not scared of anything, Senator.
Then say
I'm
yes or no. You
interested in
can say
upholding
no.
the laws and the Constitution
Okay,
in any
so
particular
Donald
scenario.
Trump asked for the active duty 82nd Airborne to be deployed during that same time. Secretary Esper has written that he convinced him against that decision. If Donald Trump asked you to use the 82nd Airborne in law enforcement roles in Washington, D.C., would you also convince him otherwise?
I'm not going to get ahead of conversations I would have with the president. However, there are laws and processes inside our Constitution that would be followed.
President Trump said in November that he is willing to consider using the active duty military against the, quote, enemy within. Have you been personally involved in
definitely
discussions
skirted
of
that
using
one
the
there.
U.S. military active duty inside the United States?
Senator, I'm glad we finally got to the topic of border security equaling national security because it's been abdicated and ignored for the last 4 years.
That wasn't my question. I'm just asking, have you been involved? You're about to be the Secretary of Defense potentially. Have you been involved in discussions about using the active duty military inside the United States?
Senator, I am not yet the Secretary of Defense.
Right. I'm
If
just asking-
confirmed, I would be party to any number of
But you haven't been in any of these
which I would not
conversations.
reveal what I have discussed with the President
No,
of the
no,
United
just
States.
have you been in conversations? Again, you're going to be in charge of 3 million people. The active duty that I know you care about, I believe you care about. So have you been in conversations about using the active duty in any way? Whether it's setting up in detention camps, policing dangerous cities, have you been involved in any of those conversations?
Certainly, I have been involved in conversations relating to doing things this administration has not, which is secure the southern border and not allow floods of illegals
So
to
are
enter our
you-
country
so-
through an invasion
Okay.
that threatens the American people.
Okay,
and there
I
are
got
ways
it.
in which the military is already playing a role in that to include 5,000 National
Do you
Guardsmen from
believe
Indiana and
that the
Texas
US
who are at the border right now allowing for border
Will
security.
you
So there is
ask the
plenty of
active
precedent
duty
for
military to
members
staff
enforcing
detention
our southern
centers?
border.
Our U.S. military is not trained in law enforcement roles. I think you know that, right? We've seen how that mission is difficult for them in places like Iraq and Afghanistan because that's not the training a uniformed military comes with. Do you support the use of active duty military in supporting detention camps?
Senator, everything we will do would be lawful and under the Constitution,
Okay,
but
I'm
I
gonna take that as
recognize
yes.
that this administration has abdicated its responsibility. President Trump is going to
Okay,
restore
in the
order at the
spirit
border,
of preserving
prevent our
the
enemies from
institution,
invading.
in
Basically,
Sir,
what he
I
just
support
said there,
the
we're going to do
military.
some
In the
stuff that's
spirit
going
of
to be
preserving the
questionably
institution that I think
legal.
we both care about, legitimately. The Uniform Code of Military Justice.
they'll
I've heard a
find
couple
a
of different
legal
things. One, you said you will
justification that
not
they can
change the Uniform
prop
Code of
up-
Military
prop it
Justice,
up
which is what
with.
governs justice system in the military. Yes or no? You said that earlier.
Those are
I'm just
laws,
confirming.
Senator, set by Congress.
Okay, so you will not go to change it. You'll not attempt to change it. You also said that JAG officers are potentially people who put their own interests in their own medals and promotions ahead of the troops. Senator Lindsey Graham was a JAG officer for most of his life. Is that what you believe about those who implement our justice system in the U.S. military?
Senator, I was speaking about particular JAG officers I've had to deal with in my military
Are you going to
experience,
get
not about a
involved?
member of the United States
Are
Senate.
you, as Secretary of Defense, going to get involved in the implementation of the U.S. military code of justice?
Senator, ultimately, it will be a big part of my job to evaluate decisions vis-a-vis
Okay,
the
so I'll take
Uniform
that.
Code of
I'll
Military
take that as
Justice.
yes. Have you seen the,
fairly.
is CQ Brown on your list in the Warrior boards to be removed from his position?
Senator, every
To be
single
fair,
senior
there are
officer will
some
be
JAG
reviewed
officers
based
that
on
are just absolute
meritocracy, standards,
dickheads.
lethality, and commitment to lawful orders they will be given.
Thank you,
certainly
Senator
wouldn't know,
Slotkin. I now recognize Senator Shaheen for a unanimous consent request.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This fucking guy. Yeah, I thought her questions were really good. Again, it was like I was
very good questions.
Couple of those I was hoping would have been asked, and just nobody else had brought those up. Yeah, it's very it's very eye opening and very scary the way he couldn't to me it's just the idea of me sitting in his shoes and not being able to say, no, absolutely, Senator, if the president demands me to give an order that is illegal there, that is unconstitutional, I will not carry that out. That to me, any Democratic nominee is going to answer that question. And if we had President-elect Harris and the incoming, I think they would just be like, of course, right? They would have an answer to that question. The fact that he can't, again, it's while Trump is probably sitting there going, yay, like Trump loves hearing that shit. Everybody else should be horrified by it. Simply put.
Yeah.
This tool.
Questions, because I want to hear your answer. How many genders are there? Tough one.
Senator, there are two genders.
I know that well. I'm a she, so I'm on board.
What a fucking stupid, childish, and he's like, I made a good
By the
one.
way, for people that, for you right wingers, there is a difference between gender and sex.
Absolutely. They're stupid.
Two
They don't
different
know
things.
that. They don't know that.
You fucking morons.
Yes.
What is the diameter of the rifle round fired out of an M4A1 rifle?
That's a 5.56.
How many push-ups can you do?
I did 5 sets of 47 this morning.
What do you think are most important strategic bases in the Pacific?
No, you
In
didn't.
the Pacific, Guam is pretty strategically significant.
How many rounds of 5.56 can you fit in the magazine of an M4 rifle?
Depends on the magazine, but standard issue is 30, Senator.
And what size round does the M9 Beretta standard issue sidearm for the military fire?
A 9mm, Senator.
What kind of batteries do you put in your night vision goggle?
Duracell?
9x18. Gotta have it all.
So I was gonna say, there's a better answer than obviously Duracell. And like these dumb fucks. He doesn't. So notice he asks about the strategic partner, which fuckstick here answers Guam, and doesn't even have the intelligence to just sort of be like, and why is that? Like, just wants to get to his question about the standard issue magazine of the M4. You and I talked about this just a couple nights ago, I think, and it's like the standard issue size of a magazine of an M4 magazine, the diameter of the round fired by the M4, and then I don't know why he felt the need to just ask about a sidearm. It's like, well, he answered the diameter of one, of the rifle successfully. I'm guessing stupid here couldn't even think of another fucking question that other than I'll just ask him about the Beretta. Like, Call of Duty players, not all of them, but a portion of Call of Duty players could answer these same questions. It proves literally nothing.
About half
the
of
Guam
them
thing,
could.
obviously, no, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I bet you half of Call of Duty players could answer that question.
Yeah, half if not more, because we see every time we say go mess with the M4 variant in any one of these games. Granted, I know they tweak the names and whatnot, but we know what an M4 is because we've always known what an M4 is since 2007 when we played COD 4. We've known what an M4 is because it was one of our favorite weapons in the game. And anytime you are messing with these weapons in the gunsmith tool, unless you're changing somehow to like a different type of round, you see NATO 5.56. We always see that. We see it so often we don't even know we're seeing it half the time. And to this day, another good, this is a silly example. When I was in high school, of course, I graduated high school in just a couple years after COD 4 came out. And I had been playing it quite a bit in like my junior and senior year. And in my senior year, there were these two guys. One of them had a father who was in the Air Force. The other one's dad was a sergeant in the Army. So these guys were both very military minded, and they were both planning on going into the respective branches that their fathers served in. Both of them were planning this. Spoiler alert, neither of them did that. When the rubber hit the road, they didn't join. Anyway, or maybe they tried and something didn't work. Anyway, these guys were both, the Army guy was quizzing the Air Force guy about I don't know if it's a call sign or if it's I don't know the term, but about aircraft. So like, for example, like what F-16, F-14 is a Tomcat? You know what I'm
nomenclature.
Nomenclature. Okay, great. I literally only heard one of these guys rattle off a couple F's and then a number, and then the other guy gave a word, like usually a single word. And I, simply from playing Call of Duty and playing on veteran difficulty where you die a lot, and I assume COD still does this, where when you die, they would show like a quote from like, like maybe General Pershing or, a famous, Sun Tzu, whatever. I don't, stuff like that. And there in COD 4, sometimes they would show like a budgetary like the cost of a single cruise missile, and like, you know, it's like, holy shit, I didn't know one of those was like 900 grand or some shit, right? Just one, right? And there was one where it said, I think it was a budgetary thing, and it said what the F1 a plane, an aircraft, don't even think I could tell you what it is today or what it looks like. I couldn't visually identify this. However, when this Army kid said F-117A, the Air Force kid was like, I went Nighthawk. And they were like, what? They just both were mind blown that I knew that. And I was like, dude, I've died in Call of Duty veteran difficulty a lot. And that's the only reason I know that. So again, apparently I could be Secretary of Defense as well. If that's Mr. Sheehy's here fucking litmus test is, can you give me a few trivia items about guns and stuff in the military? Just absurd. The idea that this proves anything goes to show how dumb this guy is and how sycophantic all these fucks are to Trump. And it doesn't, again, morality doesn't matter. It's about winning, and it's about asking questions that you think make this fuck look good to people who are watching, who are quite frankly uneducated. Just uneducated, illiterate people will go, I like that he knew that he even remembers basic stuff like gun stuff. It's like, it makes me want to.
That's how easy it is for them to score political points. This is how easy it is. Yeah. I'm sure fucking Billy Bob in Kentucky is just really enjoying.
He's just walrus clapping. Just, yay!
Oh, yeah. He knows the dynamic of bullets. Like, congratulations. Like, but they did that on purpose to get your fucking, to make you like him. They did it on purpose.
Yeah.
To gain favorability. It's that obvious. My God.
And like
the rest of us seeing it.
I have a feeling like these young like COD playing men, they'll see the same thing you and I are seeing, but their narrative around it'll be totally different. They'll be like, dude, he's right, because I mean, like, we play COD all the time. We see, oh yeah, the M4. Look at the XM4 in Black Ops 6, dude. It's 5.56. He fucking hit the nail on the head. This guy knows what he's doing, man. I'll bet you the current dude couldn't do that. The current guy would be like, that's not an important question. That's what he would say, because it's not.
That has nothing to do with the job.
Exactly. Yes. It's like, I hope that Republicans who get sold on this shit, I hope those guys are hiring managers out there somewhere, because they will hire total incompetent idiots into roles because they are easily convinced that someone knows what they're doing by very stupid shit.
Yeah.
Holy hell.